The night Seraphina Vale discovered her husband had replaced her, she wasn't crying in her chambers. She was standing in the shadows of the grand corridor watching Duke Alistair Crown laugh, really laugh, with another woman in a way he'd never laughed with her. Lady Vivian Hart's hand rested on his arm like it belonged there, like Seraphina was already erased. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't a marriage. It was a political transaction, and she'd just been marked defective. But here's what no one knew yet. Seraphina Vale didn't break easily. If you want to see how a woman turns betrayal into power, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The carriage wheels ground against frozen gravel, each rotation pulling Seraphina further from everything she'd known. She pressed her gloved fingers against the window, watching her family estate shrink into the December fog until it disappeared completely. Gone. Just like that. "You'll be a duchess," her mother had said 3 weeks ago, gripping both her hands so hard the rings cut into Seraphina's fingers. "Do you understand what that means? Our family will finally have influence, real influence." What her mother didn't say, what nobody said, was that Seraphina herself would have nothing. She'd be a title, a signature on documents, a pretty ornament in someone else's house. She was 22 years old. Across from her sat her aunt, Lady Margot, the only relative who'd volunteered to accompany her to Crown Manor. Margot's face was sharp and weather-worn, her gray hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. "Stop sulking," Margot said without looking up from her book. "You're not going to a funeral." "Aren't I?" "You're going to one of the most powerful houses in the kingdom. Some women would kill for this opportunity." Seraphina turned back to the window. "Then perhaps one of them should have married him instead." Margot snapped her book shut. "Listen to me, girl. I know you read too many novels. I know you have ideas about love and partnership and all that modern nonsense, but this is the world we live in. Your father's debts are real. Your family's position is slipping. This marriage saves all of that. By sacrificing me. By giving you power." Margot leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "You want to know the difference between a woman who survives aristocratic marriage and one who doesn't? The survivor learns the rules. She plays the game better than the men who made it. She smiles at dinner parties and builds alliances in parlors and never, ever lets them see her bleed." Seraphina met her aunt's gaze. "And if I can't do that? Then you'll be miserable for the rest of your life. Your choice." The carriage hit a rut in the road, jostling them both. In the silence that followed, Seraphina made herself a promise. She would learn the rules. She would play the game. She would be perfect. She had no idea how much that promise would cost her. Crown Manor appeared through the mist like something out of a ghost story, all gray stone and sharp towers, windows dark despite the afternoon hour. The estate sprawled across the hillside, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens that looked severe rather than beautiful in winter. A line of servants stood at attention near the entrance. Seraphina counted 12 of them, all in matching black uniforms, their faces carefully blank. The carriage door opened. A footman offered his hand. Seraphina took it, stepping down onto gravel that crunched too loudly in the quiet. "Lady Seraphina Vale," announced a thin man in a butler's uniform. "Welcome to Crown Manor." "Thank you," Seraphina said. Though he hadn't actually welcomed her, he'd just stated a fact. She waited. The servants waited. The wind cut through her traveling cloak. "The Duke?" Margot asked, her tone pointed. The butler's expression didn't change. "His Grace sends his regrets. Urgent business in the capital required his immediate attention. He'll return tomorrow evening for the wedding ceremony." Of course. Of course he wasn't here. Why would he be? This was a transaction, not a courtship. "I see," Seraphina said. Her voice came out steady. "Good. Then perhaps someone could show us to our rooms." Well, her chambers were absurdly large. 3 rooms connected by carved wooden doors. A bedroom, a sitting room, and a dressing room that could have housed an entire family. Everything was done in shades of blue and silver, heavy curtains, embroidered furniture, even the flowers in the vases. It was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful, cold, untouchable. "Well," Margot said, running a finger along the mantelpiece and inspecting it for dust, "at least they're not putting you in the servants' quarters." A young maid appeared in the doorway, bobbing a curtsy. "My lady, I'm Catherine. I've been assigned as your personal attendant. Would you like me to help you change? Dinner is in 2 hours." "Dinner with whom?" Seraphina asked. The Duke isn't here. Catherine's eyes flickered with something, pity, embarrassment, before her professional mask slid back into place. The Duke's mother, Dowager Duchess Eleanor, requests your presence. The famous Eleanor Crown. Seraphina had heard stories about her. A woman who'd ruled Crown Manor with an iron fist for 40 years, who'd buried 2 husbands and raised a son in her own image. They said she'd once had a maid dismissed for using the wrong door. They said she kept a list of enemies written in her own hand. They said a lot of things. Of course, Seraphina said. I'd be honored. Catherine helped her change into an evening dress, dark green silk that brought out her eyes. As the maid worked, Seraphina caught glimpses of herself in the mirror. She looked older than 22. She looked tired. You have beautiful hair, my lady, Catherine said, pinning up the last curl. Thank you. Seraphina paused. Catherine, may I ask you something? Of course. What is he like, the Duke? Catherine's hand stilled. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. His Grace is very dedicated to his duties, which told Seraphina absolutely nothing and everything at once. The dining room could have seated 40 people. Instead, one woman sat at the far end of an enormous table, a single place setting arranged before her like a challenge. Dowager Duchess Eleanor Crown was 70 if she was a day, but her spine was straight as a sword, her eyes sharp enough to cut. She wore black silk, mourning wear, though her second husband had been dead for 5 years, and diamonds that probably cost more than Seraphina's entire dowry. Sit, Eleanor said. Not a greeting, a command. Seraphina sat at the opposite end of the table, a ridiculous distance away. Servants appeared immediately, placing soup in front of her. You're prettier than I expected, Eleanor said. Thank you. It wasn't a compliment. Pretty girls are usually stupid. Are you stupid, Seraphina? I don't believe so. We'll see. Eleanor took a spoonful of soup, chewed thoughtfully. Your father owes money to half the kingdom. Your mother's family has produced nothing but gamblers and fools for 3 generations. Your dowry is laughable. Do you know why my son agreed to marry you? Heat crept up Seraphina's neck, but she kept her voice level. I assume you're about to tell me. Because I told him to. Eleanor set down her spoon. The Vale name is old, respectable, and completely unthreatening. You'll provide legitimate heirs without bringing complicated political alliances. You're perfect precisely because you're insignificant. Each word landed like a slap. Seraphina gripped her spoon tighter, her knuckles white. I see, she said. Do you? Eleanor leaned back in her chair. Let me make this simple. My son needs a wife who understands her place, who won't make scenes, who won't embarrass this family with demands or hysterics or romantic delusions. Can you be that woman? Seraphina thought about her mother's desperate hands, her father's study, where the debt collector's letters piled higher each week, her younger sister who deserved a season, a chance, a future. Yes, she said, I can be that woman. Good. Eleanor picked up her spoon again. Then we'll get along fine. They ate in silence after that, 20 feet of polished table between them. Seraphina tasted nothing. The wedding took place in the manor's chapel, a small stone building that smelled of old incense and older stone. Seraphina wore white silk and carried orchids. 20 guests attended, mostly Eleanor's friends, a few business associates, nobody from Seraphina's family except Margot. Duke Alistair Crown appeared 10 minutes before the ceremony, having arrived sometime after midnight, and apparently not bothered to greet his bride-to-be. He was handsome, Seraphina had known that from his portrait, but seeing him in person was different. Tall, dark-haired, with gray eyes that looked through her rather than at her. He wore his formal uniform with casual elegance, as if standing at the altar was just another item on his daily schedule. The priest said the words, Seraphina said, I do. Alistair said, I do. He kissed her cheek, brief, cold, obligatory. Welcome to the family, he said. Then he was gone, swept away by his mother and some visiting lord who needed to discuss trade agreements. Seraphina stood in her wedding dress, holding dead orchids, watching her husband disappear into a crowd that didn't include her. Well, Margot said, appearing at her elbow, you're a duchess now. Yes, Seraphina said. Lucky me. That's it. The wedding night happened because it had to happen. Alistair came to her rooms at 11, knocked twice, entered without waiting for an answer. He was efficient about it, polite even. He asked if she was comfortable. He didn't hurt her. When it was over, he kissed her forehead and left. Seraphina lay in the dark afterwards, staring at the ceiling, feeling absolutely nothing. This was her life now. This enormous house, this cold bed, this man who looked at her like she was furniture. She didn't cry. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. Instead, she got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the grounds. Snow had started falling, turning everything white and clean. From here, Crown Manor looked almost beautiful. "I can do this, see?" she whispered to her reflection in the glass. "I can be perfect." The first 3 months were a lesson in invisibility. Seraphina learned the house routine. Breakfast at 7, never in the dining room with Alistair, who took his meals in his study. Morning correspondence in her sitting room. Lunch with Eleanor once a week, a torture session disguised as family bonding. Afternoons for needlework, reading, or walking the grounds alone. Dinner at 7, usually solo, occasionally with visiting nobles who needed to be entertained. Alistair was absent. Not cruel, not unkind, just not there. He traveled to the capital frequently. When he was home, he spent hours in his study, or writing the estate boundaries or meeting with his steward. He came to her bed twice a week, regular as clockwork, and left just as regularly. "You're settling in well," Eleanor said during one of their weekly lunches. "Thank you. The staff reports no complaints. You're managing the household accounts competently. You've made no embarrassing scenes at social functions." Eleanor cut her chicken with surgical precision. "I'm pleased." Seraphina should have felt proud. Instead, she felt like a dog being told it hadn't soiled the carpet. "I'm glad to meet your expectations," she said. "Don't be satisfied with meeting them. Exceed them." Eleanor pointed her knife at Seraphina. "You want to know the secret to surviving in this world? Make yourself indispensable. Learn things other people don't know. Build relationships they can't access. Become the woman they can't afford to lose." "Is that what you did?" Eleanor's smile was sharp. "How do you think I'm still here?" Seraphina took the advice to heart. She started paying attention to everything. The way the senior housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, knew every servant's family situation and used that knowledge to maintain loyalty. The way the estate steward, Mr. Blackwood, kept 2 sets of books, one official, one that told the real story of where money flowed. The way visiting nobles revealed their agendas and what they didn't say at dinner parties. She learned names, not just of the important people, but of everyone. The under-butler who had a sick mother, the scullery maid who was saving money to send her brother to school, the head gardener who knew more about the estate's history than anyone alive. She made herself useful. When Lady Hamilton visited and needed recommendations for a new governess, Seraphina provided 3 excellent candidates. When Lord Pemberton's son was looking for a position, Seraphina mentioned it to Alistair's steward, who mentioned it to Alistair, who made it happen. Small favors, tiny threads of influence. One afternoon in May, she was going over household accounts when she noticed something odd. A regular payment to someone named V. Hart for consulting services. The amounts were small, easily overlooked, but they'd been going out monthly for 2 years. "Mrs. Davies," Seraphina called. The housekeeper appeared instantly. "Yes, my lady?" "Who is V. Hart?" Something flickered across Mrs. Davies' face. I believe that's a business matter, my lady. Perhaps you should ask His Grace?" Which meant it definitely wasn't a business matter. Seraphina filed the information away. She'd learned not to push when she hit resistance. Better to watch and wait. The first time she saw Lady Vivian Hart in person, it was at a summer garden party hosted by the Duchess of Moreland. Seraphina had been standing near the rose garden, making small talk with a boring baron, when she heard Alistair's laugh. Actually laugh. Not the polite chuckle he used at dinner parties or the dry acknowledgement he offered when someone told a joke. A real, genuine laugh. She turned. Across the lawn, Alistair stood talking to a woman Seraphina didn't recognize. She was beautiful. Auburn hair, perfect posture, a dress that probably cost more than a horse. But it was the way she carried herself that caught attention. Confident, comfortable, like she belonged everywhere she went. Alistair said something. The woman laughed, touching his arm. Seraphina's stomach dropped. That's Lady Vivian Hart, said a voice beside her. Lady Pemberton, a notorious gossip, had materialized like a shark smelling blood. Widow of Baron Hart. He died 3 years ago in a riding accident, left her quite wealthy. I see, Seraphina said carefully. She and the Duke are old friends. Very old friends, if you understand my meaning. Lady Pemberton's smile was poison. Of course that was before you. I'm sure it's perfectly innocent now. Perfectly innocent people don't laugh like that. They don't touch like that. They don't look at each other like the rest of the world has disappeared. I'm sure it is, Seraphina said. She watched them for another minute, then made herself turn away. She made small talk with the boring Baron. She admired Lady Morland's dahlias. She drank lemonade and smiled and pretended her world wasn't tilting sideways. That night, Alistair didn't come to her rooms. Or the next night. Or the night after that. You need to produce an heir, Eleanor said. They were having their weekly lunch. It was August now, 7 months into the marriage. Outside, the gardens blazed with summer flowers, but inside the dining room was cool and dim. I'm aware, Seraphina said. Are you? Because my son seems to have forgotten his obligations in that regard. Heat flooded Seraphina's face. That's not something I control, isn't it? Eleanor set down her fork. A smart woman makes herself desirable, makes her husband want to spend time with her. Are you being smart, Seraphina? I'm being exactly what you told me to be. Quiet. Undemanding. Perfect. Perfect is boring. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Men don't share their beds with boring women. They marry them, yes. They give them houses and titles and respect, but they don't actually want them. Then what do you suggest I do? Fight for what's yours. Seraphina laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that surprised them both. With what weapons? I have no money of my own, no family influence, no power except what you and Alistair allow me to have. How exactly am I supposed to fight? Eleanor studied her for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was almost gentle. The same way women like us have always fought, with patience, with strategy, with the willingness to play a longer game than they can imagine. That sounds exhausting. It is, but the alternative is being forgotten entirely. Eleanor pushed her plate away. Your choice. Seraphina started paying more attention to Alistair's schedule. He went to the capital every other week, stayed 3 days, came back distracted and distant. On the weeks he didn't travel, he had dinner meetings with visiting nobles, business associates, politicians, and increasingly with Lady Vivian Hart. She appeared at Crown Manor in September, invited by Eleanor for a weekend house party. Seraphina watched her glide through the halls like she owned them, laughing with guests, charming Eleanor's friends, and worst of all, standing just a little too close to Alistair whenever they happened to be in the same room. She's lovely, isn't she? Said Lady Whitmore, another guest, as they watched Vivian hold court in the drawing room. Very, Seraphina managed. Such a tragedy about her husband. Though between us, I heard the marriage wasn't happy. Baron Hart had quite the temper. Lady Whitmore lowered her voice. Still, she landed on her feet. Rich, beautiful, and free to do as she pleases. Some women have all the luck. That night, Seraphina couldn't sleep. She put on her dressing gown and walked the halls, ending up in the library because at least there she could pretend she'd had a purpose for leaving her room. She was standing by the window looking at nothing when she heard voices. Can't keep doing this. Alistair's voice, tight with frustration. Can't keep doing what? Existing? Vivian. They were in the hallway just outside the library. You know what I mean? People are starting to talk. Let them talk. We're not doing anything wrong. Aren't we? Silence. Seraphina's heart hammered so loud she was sure they'd hear it. I miss you, Vivian said softly. I miss us. Before all of this. Things change. I'm married now. To a child who doesn't know you, who doesn't understand you like I do. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me honestly, Alistair. When you're with her, do you feel anything, or is it just duty? Another silence. Longer this time. That silence told Seraphina everything she needed to know. I should go, Alistair said finally. Should. But will you? Seraphina didn't wait to hear his answer. She slipped out the library's side door and made her way back to her chambers, moving through the dark halls like a ghost. She didn't cry. She still wouldn't let herself cry. Instead, she sat at her writing desk and pulled out paper. She started making lists, names of people who'd asked her for favors, information she'd gathered about household operations, debts owed and alliances formed, small pieces of power she'd been collecting without even realizing it. Her aunt was right. The survivor learns the rules. But maybe, Seraphina thought, maybe the real survivor learns when to break them. Begin. By October, Vivian's visits had become routine. She came to Crown Manor twice a month, always with some excuse, helping Eleanor plan a charity event, consulting on the estate's art collection, visiting old friends in the area. She stayed for weekends, took meals with the family, and walked the grounds with Alistair like it was the most natural thing in the world. Nobody said anything. That was the worst part. The servants saw. Eleanor saw. Every noble who visited saw. But aristocratic society had rules about these things, and the first rule was, don't acknowledge what everyone knows is true. Seraphina played along. She smiled at Vivian across the dinner table. She made polite conversation about the weather and fashion and absolutely nothing of substance. She watched her husband fall in love with another woman in her own house, and she did it with perfect grace. "You're handling this well," Eleanor said one afternoon. They were in the conservatory, taking tea surrounded by orchids that probably cost more than most people's houses. "Handling what?" Seraphina asked. "Don't be coy. You know exactly what I mean." Seraphina set down her teacup with careful precision. "What would you have me do? Make a scene? Throw Vivian out? Demand that my husband love me?" She met Eleanor's eyes. "You told me to be perfect. I'm being perfect. Sometimes perfect is the wrong strategy. You'll forgive me if I don't know what the right strategy is. Your instruction manual didn't cover what to do when your husband keeps his mistress in your home. She's not his mistress." "Isn't she?" Eleanor's expression was unreadable. "Not yet, but she will be if you don't do something." "Like what?" "That," Eleanor said, "is something you need to figure out yourself." Shun. The breaking point came in November. There was a ball, a massive affair at Crown Manor to celebrate some visiting dignitary. 300 guests, a full orchestra, enough food and wine to supply a small army. Seraphina had spent weeks planning it with the staff, making sure every detail was flawless. She wore midnight blue silk that made her skin glow. Catherine had outdone herself with her hair, weaving in tiny diamonds that caught the light. Seraphina looked beautiful. She looked like a duchess. It didn't matter. Alistair arrived late to his own ball. When he finally appeared, Vivian was with him, wearing crimson, stunning as always, laughing at something he'd said. They'd been together, alone. While Seraphina was here, playing hostess, smiling at strangers, pretending everything was fine. The dancing started. Protocol dictated that Alistair should open the ball with his wife. Instead, he walked past Seraphina like she wasn't there and offered his hand to Vivian. The music swelled. They took the floor. Hundreds of eyes watched them spin together, perfectly matched, perfectly comfortable. Perfect. Seraphina stood on the sidelines, a duchess watching her husband dance with another woman at her own ball, and something inside her finally cracked. Not broke, cracked, like ice before it shatters completely. Lady Pemberton appeared beside her, practically vibrating with glee. "My dear Duchess, you must be so understanding. Not every wife would tolerate such friendship." "Must I?" Seraphina heard herself say. "Oh, I just mean—" Lady Pemberton fluttered her fan. "Well, you know how these things are. Men have their amusements. As long as they're discreet." "Is this discreet?" Seraphina gestured at the dance floor where Alistair was now laughing at something Vivian had whispered. "Is humiliating me in my own home, at my own ball, discreet?" Lady Pemberton's eyes went wide. I'm sure I don't know what you mean." But she did. Everyone did. They were all watching now, hundreds of aristocratic faces turned toward the Duchess, who was finally breaking. Seraphina felt it happening and couldn't stop it. Months of swallowing silence, of being perfect, of pretending she didn't see what was right in front of her. It was all rising up, demanding to be acknowledged. She opened her mouth, said something. She didn't even know what, just that it was loud and raw and absolutely not perfect. The music stopped. Alistair turned. Their eyes met across the ballroom, and for the first time in their marriage, he actually saw her. Not as a title or a duty or a problem to be managed, as a human being who was breaking in real time. Seraphina, he started. She ran, fled the ballroom in her beautiful dress with her diamonds and her perfect hair, ran through the corridors of Crown Manor while 300 guests whispered behind her, ran until she reached her chambers and locked the door, and finally let herself fall apart. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. She broke that promise now, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe, her perfect facade shattering into 1,000 perfect pieces. There was a knock at the door. Seraphina, Alistair's voice. Open the door, please. She didn't answer, didn't move, just sat on the floor in her expensive dress and cried for everything she'd lost and everything she'd never had. I'm sorry, he said through the door. I didn't realize. Please, can we talk? Go away, she managed. Seraphina, go away. Silence. Then footsteps, retreating. She sat there until the tears stopped, until her breath came easier, until the numbness crept back in, familiar and almost comforting. Then she got up, caught sight of herself in the mirror, makeup ruined, hair falling down, diamonds scattered on the floor, and started laughing. She looked ridiculous. She looked broken. She looked human. For the first time in months, she looked like herself. And looking at that mess of a woman in the mirror, Seraphina realized something crucial. Being perfect had gotten her nothing. Absolutely nothing. She'd played by all the rules, met all the expectations, been exactly what they'd asked her to be, and they'd destroyed her anyway. So maybe it was time to stop being perfect. Maybe it was time to get angry. Maybe it was time to fight back. Catherine knocked softly. My lady, may I come in? Seraphina opened the door. The young maid gasped at her appearance. I know, Seraphina said. I'm a disaster. No, my lady. You look... Catherine searched for words. You look real. Help me out of this dress, Seraphina said. And Catherine, tomorrow I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to find out exactly how long my husband has been in love with Lady Vivian Hart, and I need you to tell me everything you know about the household accounts, particularly the payments to V. Hart Consulting. Seraphina met the maid's eyes. Can you do that? Catherine's face transformed. Yes, my lady, I can do that. Good. Seraphina started pulling pins from her hair. Because I'm done being the perfect Duchess. I'm done being invisible. And I'm definitely done being humiliated. What are you going to do? Seraphina smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I'm going to learn the real rules, and then I'm going to win. Catherine returned the next afternoon with information that made Seraphina's blood run cold. 5 years, the maid said quietly, closing the door to Seraphina's sitting room behind her. They met at a hunting party hosted by the Duke of Ashford. Lady Vivian's husband was still alive then, but everyone knew it was a terrible marriage. Baron Hart was 20 years older and had a vicious temper. Seraphina sat very still. Go on. They were close. Very close. There was talk of them running away together, but then Baron Hart died in that riding accident and everything changed. Your Grace's family approached the Duke about the marriage arrangement around the same time. The Dowager pushed for it, hard. Eleanor knew about Vivian. Everyone knew about Vivian, my lady. Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. The household staff, the visiting nobles, the business associates. It was an open secret. Except to me. You were never meant to know. You were meant to be... Catherine trailed off, looking uncomfortable. A convenient solution to an inconvenient problem, Seraphina finished. What about the payments? Catherine pulled a small notebook from her apron pocket. V. Hart Consulting has been receiving monthly payments for 2 years. The amount started small. £50 here, 100 there, but in the last 6 months they've grown significantly. Last month it was £500. For what services? That's the interesting part. There are no services. The invoices are vague: estate consultation, advisory fees, project management. But I talked to Mr. Blackwood's assistant, who's sweet on me, and he said the steward processes them without question, direct orders from His Grace. Seraphina stood and walked to the window. Outside, the November gardens looked skeletal and sad, stripped bare by winter. He's been supporting her financially, while married to me. Yes, my lady. What else? Catherine hesitated. The guest records show Lady Vivian has stayed at Crown Manor 37 times in the past year, usually for 3 to 4 days at a time. Her chambers are in the East Wing, but another pause. The night staff have reported seeing lights in His Grace's study very late at night, and Lady Vivian walking the corridors in her dressing gown. The image was so clear it hurt. Alistair and Vivian talking until dawn while Seraphina slept alone in her cold blue rooms, sharing thoughts and laughter and intimacy that should have belonged to a wife. Thank you, Catherine, Seraphina said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. That will be all. My lady, if I may, Catherine stepped closer. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it won't be perfect. After Catherine left, Seraphina pulled out her lists again. She'd been collecting information for months without really understanding why. Now she saw it clearly. She'd been building an arsenal without knowing she'd need to go to war. She had names, she had favors owed, she had secrets overheard and patterns observed. She had the trust of the household staff and the quiet respect of several minor nobles who'd underestimated her and found themselves pleasantly surprised. It wasn't much, but it was more than nothing. The question was, what did she want? Divorce was impossible. It would ruin both families, destroy her sister's prospects, and leave her with nothing. Divorced women were social pariahs, stripped of status and income. She couldn't expose Alistair publicly without destroying herself in the process. She couldn't force him to love her. And honestly, did she even want that anymore? The man who'd let her be humiliated at her own ball? What she wanted, she realized, was power. Real power. The kind Eleanor had. The kind that meant no one could hurt her because she was too valuable to lose. But how did a powerless Duchess acquire power? There was a knock at her door. She tensed, expecting Alistair, but it was Eleanor's voice that came through. I know you're in there, girl. Let me in. Seraphina opened the door. Eleanor swept past her, elegant as always in gray silk, and settled into the best chair like she owned it, which, technically, she did. That was quite a performance last night, Eleanor said. I wasn't performing. Everyone's always performing. The question is whether you control the performance or it controls you. Eleanor studied her. You lost control. Yes. Good. Seraphina blinked. Good? Perfect is boring. Perfect is predictable. Perfect is weak. Eleanor leaned forward. Do you know what happens to perfect duchesses? They get replaced. They become furniture. They spend 40 years in beautiful rooms, hosting perfect parties, dying a little bit every day until there's nothing left but a title and a tomb. Is that what happened to you? Eleanor's smile was sharp as broken glass. I was never perfect, darling. That's why I survived. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the same dead garden Seraphina had been staring at. You want to know the truth about your husband? He's a coward. Smart, capable, charming, but ultimately a coward. He married you because I told him to, because it was safe and easy and required nothing from him emotionally. He keeps Vivienne around because she makes him feel alive in ways his convenient marriage never will. Each word was a knife, precise and cutting. Why are you telling me this? Seraphina asked. Because you need to decide what kind of woman you're going to be. The kind who accepts this arrangement quietly and fades into the wallpaper, or the kind who fights back? Eleanor turned to face her. I can't fight your battles for you. I'm 70 years old and frankly I'm tired, but I can teach you how to fight them yourself. Why would you help me? You arranged this marriage. I arranged a strategic alliance. What my idiot son has done with it is his own fault. Eleanor's eyes were cold and clear. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. You've been building influence without even realizing it. The staff adores you. Half the minor nobles in the county owe you favors. You've kept this household running smoothly while my son played house with his former lover. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing. Then you're not looking at it right. Eleanor moved toward the door, then paused. There's a dinner party next week. Lord Chancellor Westbrook and his wife, very important people. Alistair needs to make a good impression. There's a potential appointment involved. Vivian will be here, of course. She always is. I'm aware. I want you to do something for me. For yourself, really. Eleanor's smile was dangerous. I want you to be brilliant, not perfect, brilliant. Remind everyone in that room why you're the Duchess, and she's just a very persistent guest. And if I can't? Then you'll spend the rest of your life watching her take what should be yours, your choice. After Eleanor left, Seraphina sat in the growing dark and thought about choices. She'd made so many bad ones. Marrying Alistair. Trying to be perfect. Believing that if she just followed the rules, everything would work out. But maybe the rules were wrong. Maybe the whole game was rigged from the start. She lit a lamp and pulled out fresh paper. Started writing a different kind of list. Not favors owed or secrets collected, but a plan. A real plan. If she couldn't change the rules, she'd learn to break them so smoothly no one would notice until it was too late. The dinner party was in 6 days. That gave her time to prepare. Time to transform from the perfect Duchess who'd fled her own ball into something else entirely. Something dangerous. The next morning, she requested a meeting with Mr. Blackwood, the estate steward. He arrived at her sitting room looking nervous, unusual for a man who normally had the confidence of someone who knew where all the bodies were buried. "Your Grace," he said, bowing. "How may I assist you?" "Sit down, Mr. Blackwood. This might take a while." He sat, perched on the edge of the chair like he might need to escape quickly. "I've been reviewing the household accounts," Seraphina said pleasantly. "Very thorough work. You run a tight ship." "Thank you, my lady. I noticed some interesting expenditures. V. Hart Consulting, for example. Fascinating company. What exactly do they consult on?" Blackwood's face went carefully blank. "I believe those are business matters, Your Grace. Perhaps you should discuss them with the Duke." "Perhaps, but the Duke is very busy and I'd hate to bother him with trivial details, especially since I'm the one who signs off on the household budget now." She smiled. "Didn't you receive the notice? Eleanor insisted I take a more active role in estate management, starting immediately." This was a lie. Eleanor had done no such thing. But Blackwood didn't know that, and the uncertainty flickering across his face told her he wasn't sure enough to challenge her. "I see," he said slowly. "So let's try again. V? Hart Consulting. What do they do?" Blackwood shifted in his seat. "They provide advisory services." "On what?" "I'm not entirely certain, Your Grace. The Duke handles those arrangements personally." "And the payments have increased significantly in recent months. Any idea why?" "No, my lady." Seraphina let the silence stretch. Blackwood started sweating. "Here's what's going to happen," she said finally. "From now on, all payments to V. Hart Consulting come through me for approval. I want detailed invoices, actual services rendered, hours worked, deliverables produced. No more vague descriptions. Can you arrange that?" "The Duke can discuss it with me if he has concerns. I'm his wife. I'm sure he'll understand my interest in how our money is spent." She stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. I appreciate your cooperation." He left looking like a man who'd just been run over by a very polite carriage. Catherine appeared moments later, eyes bright with excitement. "You actually did it." "Did what?" "Took control. The staff's been talking about it all morning. The Duchess is finally standing up for herself. I asked some questions about accounting. That's hardly revolutionary. In this house, it's practically a coup." Catherine started tidying the tea service, though it didn't need tidying. "The staff likes you, my lady. They want you to win." "Win what?" "Whatever game you're playing with her ladyship." Catherine glanced at the door to make sure they were alone. "We all see what's happening. We all know it's wrong, but we can't do anything about it. You can." Seraphina had never thought about it that way. That the servants might be on her side, might be watching this unfold with their own opinions and loyalties. She'd been so focused on the aristocratic game that she'd forgotten there were other players on the board. "Catherine, I need you to do something else for me. Anything. Find out who else is unhappy with the current arrangement, not just servants. Visiting nobles, business associates, anyone who's noticed and disapproved. I want to know who my allies are." Catherine's smile was fierce. "Yes, my lady, I'll start immediately." Over the next few days, information flowed in like a rising tide. Catherine and her network of staff contacts proved remarkably effective at gathering intelligence. Lady Pemberton, for all her gossip, actually disapproved of Vivian's constant presence at Crown Manor. She'd told multiple people it was unseemly and disrespectful to the institution of marriage. Lord Whitmore, a business associate of Alistair's, had mentioned to his valet that he found the situation distasteful and unprofessional. Even some of Eleanor's friends, the ones who'd been married to unfaithful husbands themselves, had privately expressed sympathy for Seraphina. The picture that emerged was interesting. Society would tolerate an affair, but they expected it to be discreet. What Alistair was doing, keeping Vivian at Crown Manor, parading her in front of his wife, essentially maintaining two relationships simultaneously, was pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior. People were uncomfortable. They just didn't know how to say it without causing a scandal. Seraphina realized she had leverage. Not much, but some. If she played this right, she could use social pressure to her advantage without directly confronting anyone. She also learned something else. Vivian wasn't universally beloved. Several nobles found her too confident, too comfortable, too obviously aware of her power over the Duke. Women especially seemed to resent her, not just because she was beautiful, but because she represented something threatening, a woman who'd gotten exactly what she wanted without following any of the rules. The day before the dinner party, Seraphina did something she hadn't done in months. She went to Alistair's study and knocked. "Come in," he called. He was at his desk, papers spread everywhere, looking tired. When he saw her, surprise flickered across his face. They hadn't spoken since the ball. He'd tried several times, sending notes and requesting meetings, but she'd ignored them all. "Seraphina," he said, standing, "I'm glad you're here. I've been wanting to—" "I need to discuss tomorrow's dinner party with you," she interrupted. "Lord Chancellor Westbrook. Important guest. I want to make sure we're aligned on the arrangements." He blinked at her business-like tone. "Of course. What did you want to discuss?" "The guest list, the menu, the seating arrangement." She pulled out her notes. "I've planned for 12 at table. You, me, the Westbrooks, Lord and Lady Hamilton, Sir Edward Thornton, Lady Pemberton, and—" She paused, looking up at him. "I wasn't sure about Lady Vivian. Is she attending?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "Yes, I'd planned to invite her," Alistair said carefully. "I see. In what capacity?" "I'm sorry? Is she here as a family friend? A business associate? What exactly should I introduce her as to the Lord Chancellor?" Seraphina's voice was perfectly pleasant, but her eyes were hard. "It's just that I want to avoid any awkwardness. You understand?" Alistair's jaw tightened. "She's a friend of the family. Wonderful. Then I'll seat her between Sir Edward and Lady Pemberton, far from the head of the table, since the Lord Chancellor and his wife should have the honored positions." She made a note. "I assume that's acceptable?" "Seraphina, the menu is roast duck with cherry reduction followed by chocolate soufflé. Eleanor suggested we use the formal dining room rather than the small one. I've arranged for the blue service rather than the gold, less ostentatious, more refined. The Lord Chancellor is said to appreciate subtlety." "Stop." Alistair came around the desk. "We need to talk about what happened at the ball." "Do we?" "I owe you an apology. I was thoughtless, cruel even. I didn't mean to humiliate you." "Didn't you?" Seraphina met his eyes. "You danced with her first, at our own ball, in front of 300 guests. What exactly did you think would happen?" "I wasn't thinking—" "No, you weren't. You never think about me at all." She kept her voice level, conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "But that's fine. I understand the arrangement now. You have your life, I have mine. As long as we maintain appearances in public and produce an heir eventually, everything else is negotiable. Yes?" "That's not—" He ran a hand through his hair. "That's not what I want." "What do you want, Alistair?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know." "Well, when you figure it out, let me know." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, one more thing. I've instructed Mr. Blackwood to route all payments to V. Hart Consulting through me for approval. I'll need detailed invoices from now on. Actual work product. I'm sure you understand. I'm taking a more active role in estate management, as Eleanor suggested. Seraphina, see you at dinner tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Don't be late." She left him standing there, and the look on his face was almost worth the pain in her chest. The day of the dinner party, Seraphina woke early and spent the morning working with the staff. She checked every detail personally, the flowers on the table, the wine selection, the polish on the silverware. She wanted this to be flawless. Not perfect, flawless. There was a difference.
Catherine helped her dress at 6. Seraphina had chosen her outfit carefully. A deep emerald gown that brought out her eyes, cut in a style that was elegant without being flashy. Sophisticated. Powerful. Her hair was swept up, revealing the graceful line of her neck, with just a few strategic curls framing her face. Diamond earrings, her only jewelry, letting their simplicity speak volumes. "You look like a queen," Catherine breathed.
"I look like a duchess," Seraphina corrected. "There's a difference." Vivian arrived at 7, wearing burgundy silk and rubies. She was stunning, as always. Seraphina watched her enter the drawing room and immediately gravitate toward Alistair, touching his arm, laughing at something he said. Eleanor appeared at Seraphina's elbow. "Remember what I said. Be brilliant." "I remember."
The Westbrooks arrived promptly at 8. Lord Chancellor Westbrook was in his 50s, sharp-eyed and distinguished, with the bearing of a man who'd spent decades navigating political waters. His wife, Lady Margaret, was younger, her second marriage, reportedly, and known for being both charming and shrewd. Seraphina greeted them with genuine warmth. "Lord Chancellor, Lady Margaret, welcome to Crown Manor. We're honored to have you." "Duchess," Westbrook bowed over her hand. "Thank you for having us. I've heard wonderful things about your hospitality." "You're too kind. Please, come meet the other guests." She guided them through introductions with practiced ease. When they reached Vivian, Seraphina's smile didn't waver. "And this is Lady Vivian Hart, a friend of the family. Vivian, may I present Lord Chancellor Westbrook and Lady Margaret." Vivian's eyes flickered with something, surprise, annoyance, at being introduced as merely a friend of the family, but she recovered quickly. Delighted. At dinner, the seating arrangement was exactly as Seraphina had planned. She'd placed herself next to the Lord Chancellor, with Lady Margaret on his other side and Alistair at the far end next to the Hamiltons. Vivian was in the middle, effectively isolated from the important conversations. "I understand you're considering Alistair for the Ambassador's Council," Seraphina said to Westbrook as the first course was served. "Word travels fast," Westbrook said, looking impressed. "Yes, we're evaluating several candidates. It's an important position, requires someone with diplomatic skills, political acumen, and absolute discretion." "Alistair has all of those qualities," Seraphina said smoothly. "Though I'm perhaps biased. What concerns would you have about his candidacy?" Westbrook appreciated the directness. "Stability, primarily. The position requires someone who can represent the crown without distraction or scandal. Someone whose personal life is settled." There it was. The unspoken concern. Seraphina had suspected as much. "I understand completely," she said. "Crown Manor has been stable for generations. Eleanor has been an exceptional example of how to maintain dignity and discretion in public service. I hope to continue that tradition." Lady Margaret leaned in. "You've made quite an impression in society, Duchess. People speak highly of your management of the estate. I've been learning from the best. Eleanor has taught me that true power isn't about drama or visibility. It's about understanding how systems work and positioning yourself strategically within them." Down the table, Vivian was trying to engage Alistair in conversation, but he was distracted, watching Seraphina talk with the Westbrooks. "Good. Let him watch." The conversation flowed easily. Seraphina discussed politics with Westbrook, literature with Lady Margaret, even managed to make Sir Edward laugh with a perfectly timed observation about the absurdity of the latest parliamentary debate. She was charming without being cloying, intelligent without being threatening, commanding without being domineering. She was, Eleanor had to admit from her end of the table, absolutely brilliant. By the time dessert arrived, Lord Chancellor Westbrook was clearly impressed. "You know, Duchess, I had some concerns about the stability of Crown Manor given recent social observations. But seeing how you manage both the estate and the complexities of aristocratic life, I'm reassured. You're exactly the kind of partner a man in Alistair's position needs." Partner. Not accessory, not decoration. Partner. Seraphina felt something shift in the room. Alistair had heard it too. She could see it in his face. So had Vivian, whose hand had tightened on her wineglass. "You're very kind," Seraphina said. "Alistair and I are a team. His success is my success, and vice versa. We understand our responsibilities to each other and to the crown." After dinner, the men retired for port and cigars while the ladies moved to the drawing room. This was where things could get dangerous, where Lady Pemberton might say something cutting, where Vivian might try to reassert her position. But Seraphina was ready. "Lady Vivian," she said pleasantly, once they were all settled with tea, "I don't believe I've ever asked. Are you planning to remarry? You're still young and quite beautiful. Surely there are prospects." It was a perfect strike, polite enough that it couldn't be called an attack, but pointed enough that everyone understood the message. You're a widow, not a wife. You should be looking for your own husband, not occupying mine. Vivian's smile was tight. "I've considered it, of course, but I'm in no rush. I value my independence." "How modern of you," Lady Pemberton said, and there was an edge to her voice that suggested she didn't mean it as a compliment. Lady Margaret joined in. "Still, independence can be lonely. Don't you find?
There's something to be said for partnership, for building something together with someone." The older women were circling now, and Vivian must have felt it. The shift in the room, the way they'd all subtly aligned themselves with Seraphina without even realizing it, because Seraphina was the Duchess. Vivian was just a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. "I'm quite content," Vivian said stiffly. "Of course you are," Seraphina said with perfect warmth. "And you're always welcome here. Though I imagine you must be eager to return to your own estate soon. I know how exhausting it can be to be away from home for extended periods." Another perfect strike. Phrased as concern, delivered as dismissal. Eleanor caught Seraphina's eye from across the room and gave the tiniest nod of approval. When the men rejoined them an hour later, Alistair looked troubled, Westbrook looked satisfied, and when Vivian tried to corner Alistair for a private conversation, Seraphina smoothly intercepted. "Darling, the Lord Chancellor was hoping to see your father's collection of historical maps before he leaves. Would you mind showing him? I know how much you enjoy discussing cartography." It wasn't a request. Alistair opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Vivian helplessly. "Of course," he said finally. He left with Westbrook, leaving Vivian standing there, visibly frustrated. The evening ended at 11. Seraphina stood with Alistair at the door, playing the perfect married couple as they said goodbye to their guests. "Wonderful evening, Duchess," Westbrook said. "You're a credit to the crown name." After everyone had left, including Vivian, who departed tight-lipped and furious, Alistair turned to Seraphina. "That was impressive," he said. "Thank you. You made Westbrook believe we're a strong team, a stable partnership. Aren't we?" Seraphina's smile was cool. "When it matters, when there are important people watching, we can certainly play the part. That's what you wanted, isn't it? The appearance of a good marriage?" "Seraphina, I'm tired. Good night, Alistair." She left him standing in the hallway and went to her chambers. Catherine was waiting to help her undress. "How did it go, my lady?" "I think," Seraphina said slowly, "I just won my first real victory." The next morning, Seraphina received a note from Eleanor requesting her presence for tea. When she arrived at the Dowager's sitting room, Eleanor was already pouring. "Sit," Eleanor said. Seraphina sat. "Westbrook sent word this morning. Alistair is being seriously considered for the Ambassador's Council. His exact words were, 'I was impressed by the stability and partnership demonstrated at Crown Manor.'" Eleanor handed Seraphina a cup. "Congratulations. You've made yourself necessary." "That was the plan." "Was it? I thought perhaps you just wanted to put Vivian in her place." "That was a pleasant side effect." Eleanor laughed, a real laugh, sharp and genuine. "You're learning faster than I expected, but understand this. Last night was a battle. The war is far from over." "I know." "Vivian won't take this lying down. Neither will my son, once he realizes what you've done. You've essentially backed him into a corner. He needs you now. Needs this marriage to appear stable, or he loses the appointment." "Yes." "So what's your next move?" Seraphina set down her teacup. "I'm going to make an offer he can't refuse." "Which is?" "I'll support his career. I'll be the perfect political wife. I'll maintain appearances and host dinners and smile at all the right people. I'll give him everything he needs professionally." She met Eleanor's eyes. "But Vivian leaves Crown Manor, permanently. No more visits, no more late-night conversations, no more consulting fees. She gets out of my house and out of my marriage." "He'll never agree to that." "Won't he? He wants this appointment, wants the power and prestige that comes with it, and I'm the only one who can give it to him now. Westbrook saw what he wanted to see last night, a strong Duchess, a stable marriage. If that falls apart, if Vivian's presence becomes public knowledge, if the scandal breaks, Seraphina shrugged. His career is over before it starts.
Eleanor studied her for a long moment. You're gambling that he wants power more than he wants her. I'm gambling that he's practical, that when faced with a clear choice between his future and his past, he'll make the smart decision. And if he doesn't, then I'll destroy his reputation myself. I'd rather rule over ruins than bow in a palace that isn't mine. Eleanor's smile was proud and a little frightening. Now you sound like a crown. That afternoon, Seraphina requested a formal meeting with Alistair in his study. He agreed, probably thinking she wanted to discuss the dinner party's success. He was wrong. She entered at precisely 3 o'clock, closed the door behind her, and sat in the chair across from his desk without being invited. We need to talk, she said. I agree. About last night was a preview of what this marriage could be if we both commit to making it work. Did Westbrook send word about the appointment? Alistair looked surprised by the change of subject. Yes. He's recommending me to the king. It's not official yet, but it's as good as done. Congratulations. It's what you wanted. Yes. Here's what I want. Seraphina pulled out a piece of paper, set it on his desk. These are my terms. He picked it up, read it, and his face went white. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You're asking me to cut Vivian out of my life entirely. No contact, no visits, no... I'm not asking, Alistair. I'm telling you. This is what happens now. He stood up, angry now. You can't dictate. Can I? Let's talk about what Westbrook actually said this morning. He said he was impressed by our partnership, our stability, our united front. That's what got you this appointment. Not your brilliant mind or political connections, but the fact that you appeared to have a solid marriage. She stood too, facing him across the desk. What do you think happens when he finds out about Vivian? When society starts whispering that the new ambassador keeps his mistress in the same house as his wife? When the scandal becomes too loud to ignore?
You wouldn't? I would. I absolutely would.
Because here's what I've learned. Perfect doesn't work. Silence doesn't work. Being understanding and accommodating and invisible doesn't work. The only thing that works is power, and right now, I have it. Alistair stared at her like he'd never seen her before. When did you become this person? When you humiliated me at my own ball. When I realized that being perfect got me nothing but pain. When I understood that the only way to survive in your world was to stop being a victim and start being a player. She leaned forward. You want the appointment? You want the career and the prestige and everything that comes with it? Then you choose. Me and a future. Or Vivian and nothing. I love her, he said quietly. The words should have hurt. They didn't. They just made her tired.
I don't care, Seraphina said. Love doesn't pay bills or build careers or save reputations. Power does. Stability does. A strong partnership does. And that's what I'm offering you. This isn't a partnership. It's blackmail. Call it what you want. My terms stand. Vivian leaves, or I make sure everyone knows exactly what's been happening under this roof. Your choice. She walked to the door, then turned back. You have until tomorrow to decide. After that, I start talking to people. Lady Pemberton, for instance. She loves a good scandal. She left him there, shaking with anger or fear, or maybe both. That night, Seraphina couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the conversation, wondering if she'd gone too far, pushed too hard. What if he called her bluff? What if he chose Vivian and damned the consequences? But she'd meant what she said. She'd rather destroy everything than continue living as a ghost in her own marriage. At 2 a.m, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Alistair standing there, still dressed, looking haggard. Okay, he said. Okay, your terms. I accept. Seraphina's heart was pounding, but she kept her face calm. All of them? Vivian leaves, no more visits, no more consulting fees. I'll tell her tomorrow. His jaw was tight. But you have to hold up your end. The perfect political wife. The stable partnership. No scandals. Agreed. He turned to leave, then stopped. I meant it, you know, about loving her. I know. Do you hate me for it? Seraphina considered the question. No, I pity you.
Because you chose something safe over something real, and now you're losing both. He flinched like she'd struck him. Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Seraphina closed her door and leaned against it. She'd won. She'd actually won. So why did it feel so hollow? The hollow feeling didn't last long. By morning, it had crystallized into something sharper, harder. Determination. Catherine arrived with breakfast and news. Lady Vivian left at dawn, my lady. His Grace met with her in the library last night. The staff heard shouting. Shouting? Quite a lot of it. She threw something. A vase, I think. Mrs. Davies found the pieces this morning. Catherine set down the tray, her expression careful. She's not coming back, is she? No, Seraphina said. She's not. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt like she'd won a war by burning down the entire battlefield. But at least the battlefield was hers now. The day passed in tense silence. Alistair didn't emerge from his study. Eleanor sent a note of congratulations that read simply, "Well played. Now comes the hard part." The household staff moved through their duties with heightened awareness, like they were waiting for something to explode. It exploded at dinner. Seraphina had arranged for a private meal, just her and Alistair, their first since the confrontation. She'd chosen the small dining room, had the staff prepare his favorite dishes, even worn a dress he'd once complimented. Not because she forgave him, because she understood that winning the battle was pointless if she lost the war. He arrived late, sat down without looking at her, and drank half his wine in one swallow. "This is what you wanted," he said finally. "Are you satisfied?" "That depends. Did you do what we agreed?" "I told Vivian she's not welcome at Crown Manor anymore. I terminated the consulting arrangement. I made it very clear that our friendship is over." He refilled his glass. She didn't take it well. "I heard there was shouting." "There was a lot of shouting. She called me a coward, said I was choosing political ambition over real love, said you'd manipulated me into this." He looked at her then, his eyes dark. "She wasn't wrong about that last part. I didn't manipulate you. I gave you a choice." "That wasn't a choice. That was an ultimatum." "Welcome to marriage," Seraphina said quietly. "I've been living with ultimatums since the day I arrived here. Be perfect. Be silent. Be convenient. Don't make scenes, don't have feelings, don't exist except when it's useful." She set down her fork. "So yes, I gave you an ultimatum. The difference is, mine came with something in return. I'm offering you a real partnership, a chance to build something together. That's more than you ever offered me." Alistair was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want from me, Seraphina? Really?" "I want you to try. To see me as a person instead of a problem. To treat this marriage like it actually matters." She paused. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to respect me enough to build a life that doesn't humiliate me. And if I can't do that, then we'll have a very cold, very public partnership for the rest of our lives. Your choice." He studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. "You've changed." "Yes. I'm not sure I like it. I'm not sure I care." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or reluctant respect. "Fair enough." They finished the meal in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Not hostile, exactly. More like two generals calling a temporary truce while they figured out the new battlefield. The next 3 weeks were strange. Alistair actually started coming to dinner regularly. They talked, really talked, about estate business, politics, even books they'd read. He asked her opinion on things, listened when she answered, occasionally even took her advice. It wasn't intimacy, but it was something. A foundation, maybe, for whatever this marriage was becoming. The Ton noticed the change. Invitations started arriving for both of them. Not just Alistair, not just social obligations, but real events where their presence as a couple was specifically requested. The new stability of Crown Manor had become noteworthy. People wanted to be associated with success. Eleanor watched it all with sharp satisfaction. "You're doing well," she said during one of their weekly teas. "Better than I expected." "It's exhausting," Seraphina admitted. "Every conversation is calculated. Every smile is strategic. I feel like I'm playing a part in a very long play." "That's because you are. We all are." Eleanor poured more tea. "The question is whether you're playing the part they wrote for you or the one you wrote for yourself? What's the difference? Control, agency, power. Eleanor's eyes were sharp. You've taken the first steps, but you're about to face your real test. What do you mean? Vivian isn't done. Women like her don't give up easily. She's been quiet for 3 weeks, which means she's planning something, and when it comes, it won't be subtle. Eleanor was right. The attack came through society channels, subtle and vicious. It started with whispers. Had anyone noticed how thin the Duke was looking? How tired? How unhappy? Wasn't it sad that he'd given up his closest friendship to satisfy a jealous wife? Poor man, trapped in a loveless political marriage with a cold woman who cared more about status than his happiness. Lady Pemberton reported it to Seraphina over tea, her expression caught between concern and gossip hunger. I thought you should know what people are saying, dear. It's absolutely vicious, of course. I'm sure there's no truth to any of it. Of course, Seraphina said calmly, though her insides were churning. Thank you for telling me. The whispers grew louder. Someone, and Seraphina had a pretty good idea who, was spreading a narrative that painted Vivian as a tragic figure torn from the man she loved, and Seraphina as a manipulative shrew who destroyed a beautiful relationship out of spite and insecurity. It was brilliant, really. Vivian couldn't attack Seraphina directly without confirming the affair, but she could manipulate public opinion to make Seraphina look like the villain. And in aristocratic society, perception mattered more than truth. She's trying to isolate you socially, Eleanor said when Seraphina brought her the latest reports. Make you look unreasonable, force Alistair to choose between public opinion and your agreement. Will it work? That depends on how you respond. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. You could ignore it, let it blow over naturally, but that makes you look weak. Or you could fight back, but that makes you look exactly like the jealous harpy she's painting you as. So I'm damned either way. Not necessarily. There's a third option, which is change the narrative entirely. Don't defend yourself against her accusations. That just validates them. Instead, tell a different story. A better story. One where you're not the villain or the victim, but the hero. Seraphina thought about this. How? Eleanor's smile was sharp. By being so visibly successful, so obviously in control, that her whispers sound like the desperate jealousy of a woman who lost. Make yourself untouchable. The opportunity came a week later. Lord Haversham, an influential duke with connections to the royal family, was hosting a major winter ball. Everyone who mattered would be there, including, presumably, Vivian. Seraphina prepared like she was going to war. She chose her dress carefully, midnight blue velvet with silver embroidery, elegant and regal without being flashy. She had Catherine arrange her hair in a style that was sophisticated and modern, breaking from the fussy curls that were currently fashionable. She wore Eleanor's diamonds, a deliberate choice signaling the dowager's public support. You look like a queen, Catherine said. I look like a duchess who knows her worth, Seraphina corrected. Alistair was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He'd been quieter lately, more withdrawn, but he'd kept his end of their bargain. Tonight he wore formal black and looked every inch the rising political star. You look beautiful, he said. Thank you. You look acceptable. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Shall we terrify society together? We shall. The ball was already in full swing when they arrived. The announcement of their entrance caused a ripple of attention. People turning to look. Conversations pausing, assessments being made. Seraphina kept her head high and her hand light on Alistair's arm. They made their way through the crowd, greeting people with perfect courtesy. Lord Haversham welcomed them warmly, clearly pleased to have attracted such notable guests. His wife made a point of complimenting Seraphina's dress and engaging her in conversation about the latest charitable initiatives. I heard you've been instrumental in the new education program for estate workers' children, Lady Haversham said. Such important work. It seemed necessary, Seraphina replied. Educated workers are more productive, and their children deserve opportunities. It's good for everyone. This was true. It was also strategic. Seraphina had been building goodwill through carefully chosen charitable work, positioning herself as a duchess who cared about more than just social status. Eleanor had suggested it, but Seraphina had discovered she actually enjoyed the work. Helping people felt more real than hosting dinner parties. She was discussing funding details with Lady Haversham when she felt the change in the room's energy. A hush, followed by whispers. She turned and saw Vivian entering on the arm of Lord Blackwood, a wealthy widower known for his extensive art collection. Vivian looked stunning in crimson silk, her auburn hair gleaming in the candlelight. She moved through the crowd with absolute confidence, accepting greetings and compliments like a queen in exile graciously acknowledging her former subjects. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Vivian's smile was a challenge. "Excuse me," Seraphina said to Lady Havisham. "I see someone I need to speak with." She walked directly toward Vivian, aware that every eye in the room was watching. This was the moment people had been waiting for. Would there be drama, a scene, a delicious public confrontation? Seraphina reached Vivian and smiled warmly. "Lady Vivian, how lovely to see you. Lord Blackwood, good evening." Vivian's composure flickered slightly. She'd expected, what? Anger? Fear? Not this calm public friendliness. "Duchess," Vivian said carefully, "you look well." "Thank you. I am well. Marriage to Alistair has been quite educational." Seraphina turned to Lord Blackwood. "I hear you've acquired some new pieces for your collection, the Rembrandt sketches. Alistair mentioned them. He's quite envious." They made small talk for several minutes. Pleasant, meaningless, perfectly normal conversation. To anyone watching, they looked like acquaintances making polite society chat. Not rivals, not enemies, just two women who happened to know each other. When Seraphina excused herself, she could feel Vivian's frustration radiating behind her. By refusing to engage, by treating Vivian like any other guest rather than a threat, Seraphina had stolen her power. You couldn't be a tragic romantic figure if the supposed villain treated you with polite indifference. Eleanor found her near the refreshment table. "Nicely done." "She hates me." "Of course she does. You won." Eleanor accepted a glass of champagne from a passing servant. "But hatred without power is just noise. She can whisper all she wants. You're the Duchess. You're the one with Alistair's ring, and his name and his future. Never forget that." The evening continued. Seraphina danced with Alistair, a required opening dance that went smoothly enough. She danced with Lord Havisham, with Lord Westbrook, who was delighted to see her, with several other notable men whose goodwill was worth cultivating. She laughed at appropriate moments, made intelligent conversation, and generally demonstrated that she was exactly what a duchess should be. Around midnight, she stepped out onto the terrace for air. The winter night was cold but clear, stars sharp overhead. She breathed deeply, letting the chill clear her head. "Quite a performance," she turned. Vivian stood in the doorway, backlit by the ballroom's warmth. "I wasn't performing," Seraphina said. "Weren't you?" Vivian stepped onto the terrace, closing the door behind her. The perfect duchess, the devoted wife, the charitable saint. It's all very convincing. "What do you want, Vivian?" "I want you to know that I see through you. I know what you did. You blackmailed Alistair into ending our relationship. You used his career ambitions to manipulate him into choosing you. I gave him a choice. That's more than you ever did. I loved him." Vivian's composure cracked. "I loved him when he was nobody, before any of this mattered. I was there when his father died. I understood him in ways you never will. We had something real. Had. Past tense." Seraphina kept her voice level. "And real or not, it was destroying him. Do you know what people were saying? That he was weak, undisciplined, unable to manage his own household. That affair was killing his reputation and his career, and you didn't care because it made you feel special. That's not fair, isn't it? You wanted him to choose love over duty, passion over responsibility. That's very romantic. It's also incredibly selfish." Seraphina stepped closer. "I'm not going to apologize for protecting my marriage and his career. You were the one breaking the rules, not me." "He'll never love you," Vivian said. "You know that, don't you? You can have his name and his house and his public loyalty, but you'll never have his heart. I have that. I'll always have that." The words should have hurt. They did hurt. But Seraphina had learned to function through pain. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but I have his future. I have his respect. I have a partnership that's building something real instead of destroying everything for the sake of feelings. And honestly, Vivian, I'd rather have that than a heart that's going to age and change and eventually resent me for all the sacrifices he made." Vivian's eyes were bright with tears. "You're cold. I'm practical. There's a difference."
Is there? Because from where I'm standing, you've turned into exactly the kind of woman I'd never want to be. Calculating, manipulative, willing to destroy love for the sake of power. And from where I'm standing, you're exactly the kind of woman I refuse to be. Entitled, selfish, willing to destroy someone's entire future because you can't handle not getting what you want. Seraphina moved toward the door. We're done here. Stay away from my husband, stay away from my house, and stay away from me. That's not a request. She left Vivian on the terrace and went back inside. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them steady enough to accept another glass of champagne. She found Alistair talking with a group of politicians and slipped her hand through his arm. He looked down at her, surprised. Are you all right? I'm fine. Just cold. She smiled at the politicians. Forgive the interruption, gentlemen. Please continue. They stayed another hour, then made their excuses and left. In the carriage ride home, Alistair was quiet. I saw you talking with Vivian, he said finally. Yes. What did she say? That she'll always have your heart, that I'll never be more than a political arrangement, that I'm cold and calculating and manipulative. Seraphina looked out the window at the dark countryside rolling past. She's not wrong about some of it. Seraphina, it's fine. I know what I am. I know what this is. I'm not under any illusions about love or romance or whatever fantasy people tell themselves about marriage. She turned to face him. But I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this to hurt you or her. I'm doing this because I refuse to be invisible. I refuse to be the convenient wife who gets quietly humiliated while everyone pretends not to notice. If that makes me cold, so be it. Alistair looked at her for a long moment. You're not cold. You're angry. There's a difference. Am I? You've been angry since the day we married. Maybe before. You just hid it well. He leaned back against the seat. I don't blame you. I've given you plenty of reasons. Is this an apology? It's an observation. He paused. I treated you terribly. I know that. I was selfish and thoughtless and cruel. I wanted to keep Vivian in my life without accepting what that cost you. And I'm sorry for that. Seraphina felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first crack in the wall she'd built. Thank you, she said quietly. They rode in silence the rest of the way home. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Lord Chancellor Westbrook had made his recommendation to the king. Alistair was officially appointed to the Ambassador's Council, effective immediately. It was a massive achievement, the kind of position men spent decades working toward, and Alistair had gotten it in his early 30s. The household erupted in celebration. Eleanor hosted a small dinner party to mark the occasion. Toasts were made. Congratulations flowed. Alistair gave a speech thanking everyone for their support, and when he mentioned Seraphina specifically, my wife, whose wisdom and partnership have been invaluable, she felt eyes on her. Approving eyes. Respectful eyes. She'd done it. She'd transformed herself from invisible bride to indispensable partner. But that night, alone in her chambers, the victory felt hollow again. She'd won the power she wanted. She'd secured her position. She'd even earned her husband's grudging respect. But she was still sleeping alone, still maintaining a marriage that was more business arrangement than relationship, still pretending that strategic partnership was enough. Was it enough? Could it ever be enough? She didn't have answers, but she was starting to think that maybe the questions themselves were dangerous. The weeks that followed were busy. Alistair's new position required them to attend countless official functions, meet with diplomats and nobles, represent the crown at various events. They played their parts perfectly. The ambitious young ambassador and his brilliant Duchess, a modern partnership that represented the future of aristocratic marriages. It was exhausting. One night, after a particularly tedious state dinner, Seraphina was getting ready for bed when Alistair knocked on her door. This was unusual. He hadn't visited her chambers since their agreement, maintaining a careful distance. "Come in," she called. He entered, still in his evening clothes, looking troubled. "Can we talk?" Of course. He sat in the chair by the fireplace, ran a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about what you said, about treating this marriage like it matters. And? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be a good husband to someone I didn't choose, who didn't choose me.
We were forced together by circumstances and family expectations and political necessity. How do we build something real from that? Seraphina sat on the edge of her bed, considered his words.
I don't know either, but I think maybe we start by being honest, by actually talking to each other instead of just playing our parts. All right. Honestly then? He met her eyes. I don't love you. I wish I could say otherwise, but I can't. I respect you. I admire you even. But I don't love you. The words hurt, but they were also a relief. Truth, finally. Honestly, she said, I don't love you either. I don't think I ever will. You've hurt me too deeply for that. But I think, she paused, searching for the right words, I think maybe we could build something different. Not love, but partnership, mutual respect, maybe even friendship, eventually. Is that enough for you? I don't know. But it's more than I had 3 months ago, and more than I'd have anywhere else. She pulled her robe tighter. The truth is, I have more power and influence now than I ever would have had if I'd married for love. I have a voice. People listen when I speak. I'm making actual changes with the education initiative. That matters to me. More than love? I don't know if I believe in love anymore. Not the romantic kind, anyway. I believe in respect and partnership and building something meaningful together. Is that enough? She shrugged. Ask me again in 10 years. Alistair almost smiled. You're different than I expected. So are you. I thought you'd be cruel. You're just selfish, which is different. Is that better or worse? Neither, just different. She stood. It's late. We have that diplomatic breakfast tomorrow. He stood too, moved toward the door, then stopped. Seraphina, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're my Duchess. This would all be much harder without you. For what it's worth, I'm glad I fought back instead of fading away. After he left, Seraphina sat alone in the dark and wondered if she'd just agreed to a lifetime of near enough, good enough, almost satisfied. Was this winning or just a different kind of losing? She didn't know, but she'd made her choice, and she was going to see it through. The real crisis came in February. Seraphina was reviewing household accounts when she noticed something odd. A large payment, £3,000, had been made to V-Heart Consulting just 2 weeks ago. After the agreement, after Alistair had promised to end all financial ties. Her hands started shaking. She called for Catherine. Find Mr. Blackwood. Bring him here, now! The steward arrived within 10 minutes, looking nervous. Your Grace? Explain this. She showed him the entry. Blackwood went pale. His Grace authorized it personally. I assumed you'd been informed. You assumed wrong. When was this payment made? Last week? Wednesday, I believe. The day after Alistair had come to her chambers. The day after their honest conversation about partnership and respect and building something together. He'd lied. While pretending to be honest, while talking about trying, he'd been secretly maintaining his connection to Vivian. That will be all, Mr. Blackwood. After he left, Seraphina sat very still. She could feel everything she'd built starting to crack. The partnership, the trust, the careful structure of their new arrangement. He'd betrayed her. Again. She could confront him, demand an explanation, threaten him with exposure again, or she could do something else, something worse. She pulled out paper and started writing. Not a letter, a plan. If Alistair wanted to keep Vivian in his life, fine. But he was going to learn that every choice had consequences, and Seraphina was done being the only one who paid them. That night at dinner, she was perfectly pleasant, asked about his day, discussed the upcoming diplomatic trip to France, made no mention of the payment or Vivienne or anything controversial. You're in a good mood, Alistair observed. I am. I had a very productive day. She smiled. I've been thinking about your suggestion, about trying to build something more than just a political partnership. He looked surprised. Really? Really? In fact, I've decided to take a more active role in your diplomatic work. Lady Westbrook mentioned that ambassadors' wives often serve as informal advisors, particularly on social and political matters. I think I could be helpful in that capacity. That would be wonderful, actually. Westbrook was just saying he wished more wives took that kind of interest. Perfect. Then I'll attend all the strategy meetings, review all the correspondence,
be involved in all the decisions. She took a sip of wine. After all, we're partners now. Partners share everything, don't they? Something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe. Of course. Excellent. I'm so glad we're on the same page. Over the next week, Seraphina inserted herself into every aspect of Alistair's work. She attended his morning briefings. She reviewed his diplomatic correspondence. She made suggestions that were actually quite good. Eleanor had trained her well in political strategy. She became indispensable to his daily operations. She also started controlling information. Not obviously, not dramatically, just small things. A letter that arrived while he was out. She read it first, made notes, filed it where it might be easily overlooked. A meeting he'd forgotten about, she reminded him, but only after she'd already spoken to the participants and shaped the conversation. Piece by piece, she wove herself into his professional life so thoroughly that he started relying on her for everything. And then when she had his complete trust and dependence, she found what she'd been looking for. In a locked drawer in his study, not locked well enough to keep out a determined Duchess with access to the household keys, she found letters, dozens of them, from Vivian. Recent letters. They'd been writing to each other. The £3,000 hadn't been a one-time payment. It had been accompanied by promises of continued support, assurances that he still cared, plans for secret meetings in London when he traveled for diplomatic work. Seraphina read every letter. Each one was a knife to whatever fragile hope she'd been harboring. He hadn't just broken their agreement. He'd been actively deceiving her while pretending to honor it. She should have been devastated. Instead, she felt cold clarity. This was who he was. A man who wanted everything. The perfect political marriage and the passionate affair, the public respect and the private romance, a man who thought he could have it all without consequences. She was going to teach him otherwise. Seraphina carefully returned the letters to exactly where she'd found them. Then she went to her chambers and wrote 3 letters of her own. The first was to Lord Chancellor Westbrook, expressing her concern about the ambassador's personal financial decisions and their potential impact on his judgment and discretion. She didn't mention Vivian by name. She didn't have to. She just planted a seed of doubt. The second was to Lady Pemberton, mentioning casually that she'd heard rumors about secret correspondence between certain parties. And wouldn't it be terrible if such things became public? Lady Pemberton would gossip. The whispers would start. The third was to Vivian herself. It was short and devastating. I know about the letters. I know about the money. I know about the London meetings. You think you've won because he can't give you up. But you haven't. You've just proven that you'll accept crumbs from a married man instead of finding someone who can actually be with you. That's not victory. That's desperation. Consider this your only warning. End this, or I'll end it for you in ways that will destroy both your reputations permanently. She sent all 3 letters before she could second-guess herself. The response came faster than she expected. Westbrook requested a private meeting with Alistair, suddenly, urgently. The whispers in society grew louder, people wondering why the new ambassador seemed troubled, why his wife looked so composed while he looked increasingly stressed. And Vivian showed up at Crown Manor unannounced. Seraphina was in the conservatory when Catherine rushed in, breathless. "My lady, Lady Vivian is here. She's demanding to see you." Mrs. Davies tried to turn her away, but she pushed past. Vivian appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with anger. "You evil, manipulative, leave us," Seraphina said to Catherine. The maid hesitated, then left, closing the door behind her. "How dare you?" Vivian said, advancing into the room. "How dare you threaten me? How dare you try to destroy what Alistair and I have?" "What you have is a lie," Seraphina said calmly. "Secret letters, hidden payments, sneaking around like criminals. That's not a relationship. That's a fantasy you're both too cowardly to give up." "He loves me. He loves the idea of you, the romance, the excitement, the escape from responsibility." Seraphina stood. "But he's not going to leave me. He's not going to choose you publicly. He's going to keep you hidden and secret and available whenever he wants the thrill without the consequences. And you're going to accept it because you'd rather have scraps of him than nothing at all." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? How many times has he promised to be with you properly? How many times has he said someday, or when the time is right, or we just need to wait a little longer?" Seraphina moved closer. "I know exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm the reason someday will never come. I'm the reason the time will never be right. I'm the obstacle you can't remove because doing so would destroy everything he's worked for. Vivian's composure was cracking. You're cruel. You don't even love him, but you won't let him go. You're right. I don't love him, but he's mine anyway. Not because of emotion, but because of choice and contract and shared future. That's stronger than love. Love fades. Love gets complicated. Love makes people stupid. Seraphina's voice was ice. What I have with Alistair will last because it's built on mutual benefit, not feeling, and there's nothing you can do about it. He'll hate you for this, Vivian said, tears starting to fall. When he finds out what you've done, what you've threatened, he'll hate me. He'll resent me. He'll probably despise me. Seraphina felt something break inside her chest but didn't let it show. But he'll stay. Because I'm the one who can give him the life he actually wants, not the one he thinks he wants. And deep down he knows that. Vivian stared at her, mascara running, beautiful even in devastation. You've won, she said bitterly. Is this what winning feels like? Being married to a man who resents you? Building a life on manipulation and threats? Yes, Seraphina said. This is what winning looks like. And I'll take it over being you, waiting forever for a man who will never actually choose you. Vivian left without another word. Seraphina stood alone in the conservatory, surrounded by expensive orchids and winter sunshine, and felt absolutely nothing. She'd won. She'd protected her marriage, secured her position, proven she was untouchable. She'd also become exactly the kind of woman she'd promised herself she'd never be. Cold, calculating, willing to destroy everything to get what she wanted. The door opened. Alistair stood there, and his face was terrible. Westbrook told me about your letter, he said quietly, about your concerns regarding my judgment and discretion. I see. He's questioning my appointment, suggesting I take time to settle my personal affairs before assuming full duties. Alistair stepped into the room. You did that. You went behind my back and sabotaged my career. I protected it. There's a difference. By making me look unstable? Unreliable? By planting doubts in the Lord Chancellor's mind? By making sure your affair doesn't destroy everything we've built. Seraphina faced him. I found the letters, Alistair. All of them. I know you've been lying to me. Breaking our agreement. Pretending to try while secretly maintaining the exact relationship you promised to end. His face went white. You went through my things. You gave me no choice. You made promises and broke them. You looked me in the eye and talked about partnership while planning secret meetings with her in London. What exactly did you expect me to do? Not this. Not destroying my reputation, threatening Vivian, turning into some kind of monster, Seraphina finished. Is that what I am now? Because I refused to be humiliated? Because I fought back instead of accepting your betrayal quietly? You've become exactly what Vivian said you were. Cold, vindictive, manipulative. And you've become exactly what I thought you were. A coward who wants everything without earning any of it. They stared at each other across the conservatory, years of resentment and anger and hurt crystallizing into something sharp and unbreakable. I want a divorce, Alistair said. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No, Seraphina said. You can't just… Yes, I can. Divorce requires my consent. You won't get it. She moved closer. You want to know why? Because divorcing me would ruin us both. Your career would be over. My family would be destroyed. Your precious appointment would evaporate. And Vivian, society would never accept her as your wife after this. You'd lose everything. I'd be free. You'd be nothing. A disgraced ex-ambassador with a scandalous marriage and a destroyed reputation. Is that really what you want? His hands were shaking. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this, pretending, playing this part, being trapped in a marriage with someone who hates me. I don't hate you, Seraphina said, and realized it was true. I pity you because you still don't understand that you can't have everything. You have to choose. And you've already chosen. You chose ambition over Vivian when you married me. You chose career over honesty when you took the appointment. You chose power over love every single time it mattered. I didn't trap you. You trapped yourself. Alistair looked at her with something like horror. What have we become? Partners, Seraphina said. Isn't that what you wanted? He turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of something. Seraphina stood alone among the orchids and wondered if this was really victory. She'd won the war. She'd secured her position. She'd proven she couldn't be broken or discarded. But she was standing in a beautiful conservatory in a beautiful house, in a beautiful life that felt like a tomb. Outside, storm clouds were gathering. Inside, something fundamental had shattered. And Seraphina realized too late that there are some victories that cost more than losing ever could. The storm broke 3 days later, but not the way anyone expected. Seraphina woke to find Catherine standing by her bed, face pale in the pre-dawn darkness. "My lady, you need to see this." She handed over a newspaper, the Morning Chronicle, one of London's most widely read publications. The headline made Seraphina's blood run cold. Ambassador's marriage in crisis. Sources. Close to Duke Crown reveal years-long affair. Her hand shook as she read. Someone had leaked everything. The affair with Vivian, the secret payments, the hidden letters, even details about the confrontation in the conservatory. It was all there, laid out in black and white for the entire kingdom to read. "Who did this?" Seraphina whispered. "No one knows, my lady, but it's everywhere. Every paper in London is running some version of the story." Seraphina dressed quickly, her mind racing. This was catastrophic, not just for Alistair, for both of them. The scandal would destroy his career, ruin her reputation, drag both families through public humiliation. Everything she'd fought for was crumbling. She found Alistair in his study, already dressed despite the early hour, surrounded by newspapers. He looked like he hadn't slept. When he saw her, his expression was bleak. "Did you do this?" "No." "Swear it." "I swear, this destroys me as much as it destroys you. Why would I—" She stopped. "Vivian." She wouldn't. "Wouldn't she? You ended things. I threatened her. She lost everything. This is revenge." Seraphina picked up one of the papers, scanned it. "The details are too accurate. Someone with intimate knowledge leaked this, someone who wanted to hurt us both." A knock at the door. Eleanor swept in without waiting for permission, her face grim. "We have a problem." "We noticed," Alistair said bitterly. "Lord Chancellor Westbrook sent word. He's withdrawing the appointment recommendation. The king won't accept an ambassador whose personal life is a public scandal." Eleanor sat down heavily. "It's over, Alistair. Your career is finished before it really started." "There has to be something we can do," Seraphina said. "Some way to contain this." "Contain it?" Eleanor laughed harshly. "Dear girl, this isn't a small fire. This is an inferno. Every drawing room in London is talking about it. Every newspaper is running follow-up stories. You can't contain this. You can only survive it." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'm working on it." Eleanor stood. "In the meantime, you both need to make a decision. Do you fight together, or do you turn on each other? Because society is watching, and how you handle this will determine everything that comes after." After Eleanor left, Seraphina and Alistair sat in silence. The morning light was creeping through the windows, exposing all the damage, all the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. "I didn't leak it," Seraphina said quietly. "I need you to believe that." "I do." Alistair rubbed his face. "Vivian must have kept copies of the letters, documentation of the payments. She knew exactly how to hurt me. She hurt both of us. This makes me look like a fool who couldn't control her own husband. You're not—" He stopped. "I'm sorry. For all of this. For the affair. For the lies. For destroying everything you built. You were right about me. I wanted everything, and I was too much of a coward to choose. That doesn't help us now." "No, it doesn't." He looked at her. "What do we do?" It was the first time he'd ever asked her opinion like that, not as a formality, but as a genuine question, like he actually trusted her judgment. Seraphina thought about it. They could separate, try to distance themselves from each other, and minimize the damage. They could issue denials, claim the story was exaggerated or false. They could do what aristocratic couples always did, maintain a cold, formal distance while pretending everything was fine. Or they could do something else entirely. "We tell the truth," she said. "What?" "Not all of it, but enough. We acknowledge the marriage has been difficult. We admit there were problems, and then we show everyone that we're fixing them." She leaned forward. "People love a redemption story, Alistair. They love seeing flawed people become better. Right now we're a scandal, but we could become something else. A cautionary tale about the dangers of arranged marriages, yes, but also a story about two people who chose to fight for their marriage instead of abandoning it.
That's insane. Is it? Think about it. Everyone expects us to fall apart now, to divorce or separate or destroy each other publicly. What if we did the opposite? What if we became the couple who survived this? Who came out stronger? Alistair stared at her. You want to use our disaster as a political asset.
I want to survive. This is how we do it. She stood, paced the room. We can't undo the scandal, but we can control what comes next. We go public together. We give an interview to a reputable paper. We admit the marriage was arranged and started poorly. We acknowledge you made mistakes. We show that I'm not a victim, but a partner who's choosing to stay and rebuild. We make it about forgiveness and growth and partnership. Society will crucify us. Society is already crucifying us. This way, at least we're controlling the narrative. Seraphina stopped in front of him. I'm not saying it will be easy. I'm saying it's our only chance. Unless you'd rather divorce and lose everything? He was quiet for a long moment. You'd really do this? Publicly stand by me after everything I've done? I'd stand by our marriage. There's a difference. She met his eyes. I meant what I said in the conservatory. I don't hate you. I hate what you did, and I hate what this situation turned us both into. But if we're going to survive this, we need to actually become the partnership we've been pretending to be. You're asking me to choose you, publicly and permanently. I'm asking you to choose us. Our future. Our reputation. Our survival. She paused. Vivian leaked this because she thought it would destroy us. I refused to give her that satisfaction. Alistair stood, walked to the window, looked out at the estate grounds. When he turned back, something had changed in his face, a kind of resolve. All right, we do this together. But Seraphina, if we're really going to make this work, I need to actually change, not just for appearances, actually change.
I know, and you need to trust me again, or at least try to. I know that too. She moved beside him. I'm not saying it will be perfect, but maybe it can be real. Finally. They contacted the London Observer, one of the most respected papers in the kingdom, known for serious journalism rather than gossip. The editor, Mr. Thomas Reed, agreed to an exclusive interview. He arrived at Crown Manor 2 days later, skeptical but intrigued. The interview took place in the library. Reed sat across from Seraphina and Alistair, notebook in hand, eyes sharp. Let me be direct, Reed said. The public thinks your marriage is a sham, that you, Duke Crown, were having an affair while your wife suffered in silence, that this is just another example of aristocratic decadence and moral bankruptcy. What do you want to say to that? Alistair took a breath. The public is partly right. My marriage to Seraphina was arranged by our families. We barely knew each other when we wed, and I handled that situation terribly. I maintained a close friendship with a woman I'd known before my marriage, and that friendship crossed lines it shouldn't have crossed. I hurt my wife, I disrespected our marriage, and I'm deeply ashamed of that. Reed's pen scratched across paper. He turned to Seraphina. And you, Duchess, how did you handle discovering your husband's affair? Badly at first, Seraphina said honestly. I felt betrayed and humiliated. I wanted revenge. I wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt me, and I did some things I'm not proud of in pursuit of that. Like threatening Lady Vivian Hart? So Reed had done his homework. Yes, I threatened her. I also manipulated situations to force my husband to choose between his career and his relationship with her. I became calculating and cold because I thought that was the only way to survive. Do you regret that? Seraphina considered the question. I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret fighting for my marriage. Women in my position are expected to accept humiliation quietly, to be perfect and silent and convenient. I refused to do that. Reed looked impressed despite himself. And now, what's changed? We have, Alistair said. This scandal forced us to actually talk to each other, to be honest instead of just playing roles. We're not a perfect couple. We may never be. But we're trying to build something real instead of just maintaining appearances. That's quite a claim. How do I know this isn't just more performance? Another strategy to salvage your reputation? You don't, Seraphina said bluntly. You'll have to watch and see if our actions match our words. But Mr. Reed, arranged marriages are common in our world. Most couples just pretend everything's fine while living separate lives. We're trying to do something different, actually build a partnership, actually choose each other even though we didn't initially. Isn't that worth something?
The interview lasted 2 hours. Reed asked hard questions, pushed back on easy answers, forced them to articulate exactly what they meant by trying and partnership and real. By the end, Seraphina felt wrung out, but also strangely hopeful. The article ran 3 days later. The headline was better than she'd dared hope. The Crown speak, a marriage arranged but not abandoned. Reed had written a balanced piece that acknowledged their mistakes while presenting them as two people genuinely trying to build something from difficult circumstances. He quoted Alistair's admission of wrongdoing. He included Seraphina's refusal to play the victim. And he ended with a question. Could an arranged marriage become a chosen partnership? The Crowns were going to try. The response was mixed. Conservative nobles thought they'd been too honest, too willing to air private matters in public. Progressive circles praised their transparency. Women's groups were divided. Some admired Seraphina's strength, others thought she should have left Alistair entirely. The scandal didn't disappear, but it shifted, became something more complex than simple condemnation. And then something unexpected happened. Letters started arriving. Dozens of them, then hundreds, from other women in arranged marriages who saw themselves in Seraphina's story, from men who admitted they'd made similar mistakes to Alistair's, from young couples about to enter arranged unions who wanted advice on how to make them work.
Listen to this one, Seraphina said to Eleanor over tea one afternoon. My husband and I have been married 15 years in an arrangement made by our families. We've never been close, never really tried. Your interview made me realize we could choose to be more than just two people sharing a name. Thank you for showing me it's not too late. Eleanor smiled. You've started something, dear, whether you meant to or not. We just wanted to survive the scandal,
and instead you've become a symbol. People need to believe that difficult situations can be transformed. The choices matter more than circumstances. You're giving them that. The political landscape shifted too. Lord Chancellor Westbrook requested another meeting with Alistair, not to withdraw support, but to reconsider. Apparently several influential nobles had written to him, expressing admiration for how the Crowns had handled the crisis. This is irregular, Westbrook said during the meeting. The scandal should have ended your career, but somehow you've turned it into evidence of character, of the ability to handle difficult situations with honesty and grace. He paused. The king is willing to reconsider the appointment. Not immediately. You'll need to prove this isn't just talk. But in 6 months, if you've demonstrated genuine change, we can revisit it. After Westbrook left, Alistair turned to Seraphina with something like wonder. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, she corrected. This only works if we both commit. I know. He hesitated. I ended things with Vivian completely this time. I sent back the letters, returned some jewelry she'd given me, made it clear there's no future there. I need you to know that. I believe you. Do you? Really? Seraphina thought about it. I believe you're trying. That's enough for now. The real test came a month later when Vivian appeared at a society event both Seraphina and Alistair were attending. It was the first time they'd all been in the same room since the scandal broke. The ballroom went quiet when Vivian entered. Everyone was watching to see what would happen. Would there be drama? Another confrontation? Would the Crown's new partnership survive seeing the woman who'd nearly destroyed them? Seraphina felt Alistair tense beside her. She took his hand, the first time she'd initiated physical contact in their entire marriage. We're fine, she said quietly. Let her see that we're fine. They continued their conversation with Lord and Lady Hamilton, apparently unconcerned. Vivian made her way through the room, and Seraphina caught glimpses of her. Beautiful as always, but there was something brittle in her smile, something desperate in the way she laughed too loudly. Eventually, inevitably, their paths crossed. Duchess, Duke. Vivian's voice was cold. Lady Vivian, Seraphina said pleasantly. How are you? Surviving, though I imagine you're quite pleased with yourself. Actually, I'm not thinking about you at all. Seraphina's voice was calm but firm. I'm focused on my marriage and my work and building a life that matters. You should do the same. Easy to say when you got everything you wanted. I got a second chance, Seraphina corrected. That's different from getting what I wanted, but I'm grateful for it anyway. Alistair spoke for the first time. Vivian, I owe you an apology. I led you to believe things could be different between us. That was cruel and wrong. I should have been honest years ago about what I could and couldn't offer. I'm sorry. Vivian's composure cracked slightly. You're sorry. That's supposed to fix everything? No, nothing fixes everything. But it's true anyway. He paused. I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. You deserve that. For a moment, Vivienne looked like she might cry or scream, or both. Then she gathered herself, lifted her chin, and walked away without another word. The ballroom was still watching. Seraphina and Alistair stood together, not touching but clearly united, and something shifted in the room's energy. The scandal was old news now. The story had moved on. The crowns had become something else. Not perfect, but trying. And apparently that was enough. Later that night, in the carriage home, Alistair said, "Thank you." For what? For holding my hand, for standing with me, for not enjoying her pain even though you could have. I'm not interested in revenge anymore, Seraphina said. I'm interested in moving forward. Are we? Moving forward? She considered the question honestly. Yes, slowly, carefully, but yes. The work of rebuilding wasn't dramatic. It was small, daily choices. Alistair started having breakfast with her instead of alone in his study. They took walks together, actually talking instead of just making polite conversation. He asked her advice on diplomatic matters and actually listened to her answers. She let him see her working on the education initiative, shared her frustrations and victories. One evening in April, they were in the library going over correspondence when Alistair suddenly laughed. What? Seraphina asked. This. Us. Working together like it's normal. He shook his head. 6 months ago, I thought this marriage was a prison. Now I don't know what it is, but it's not a prison. It's a choice, Seraphina said. That's the difference. We're choosing this now. Are you happy? The question surprised her. I don't know if happy is the right word. Content, maybe. Hopeful. I feel like I'm building something that matters instead of just surviving. She looked at him. Are you? I'm getting there. I miss the excitement sometimes, the passion, the feeling of being swept away. He met her eyes. But I don't miss the guilt, or the lying, or the constant fear of being caught. What we have now is quieter, but it's real. And that's worth more than I knew. They worked in comfortable silence after that. Outside, spring rain pattered against the windows. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers and become enemies were slowly, carefully becoming something else. The turning point came in May at a diplomatic function in London. Seraphina had been invited to join Alistair at a meeting of the Ambassadors' Council. Still provisional, but he was being allowed to attend and prove himself. She was one of only 3 wives present, and the only one asked to speak. Lord Chancellor Westbrook introduced her. The Duchess of Crown has been instrumental in developing educational programs for estate workers. I thought her perspective might be valuable as we discuss rural development initiatives. Seraphina stood, aware of eyes on her. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. She thought about the girl who'd arrived at Crown Manor 9 months ago, terrified and invisible. She was someone else now. Gentlemen, she began, you're probably wondering why a duchess is speaking to you about education policy. The truth is, I didn't start this work because I'm some kind of reformer. I started it because I was angry and powerless and needed something that was mine, something I could control when everything else in my life felt like it was controlled by others. A few uncomfortable shifts. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. But what I learned surprised me. When you educate workers' children, productivity increases. When families have hope for the future, estate management becomes easier. When people feel valued, they work harder. This isn't charity, it's strategy. Smart strategy that benefits everyone involved. She laid out her program in detail. The costs, the results, the expansion potential. She answered questions with confidence born of actually knowing what she was talking about. By the end, several council members were asking for more information, wanting to implement similar programs on their own estates. Lord Westbrook was smiling. Well done, Duchess. Perhaps we should invite you to more of these meetings. After the session ended, Alistair found her in the corridor. That was incredible. You were incredible. I was competent. There's a difference. No, you were more than that. You walked into a room full of men who thought you shouldn't be there and made them take you seriously, made them see you as an asset. He paused. I'm proud of you. The words hit her unexpectedly hard. When was the last time someone had said they were proud of her? Thank you, she managed. I mean it. You've become exactly what Eleanor said you would. Indispensable. Not just to me, to everyone. He hesitated. I know I don't say this enough, but I'm lucky to be married to you. Not because of politics or strategy, but because you're remarkable. Seraphina felt something crack in her chest. Not painfully, but like ice breaking in spring. Alistair, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know trust has to be earned back. I know we're still rebuilding. I just wanted you to know that I see you now, really see you, and I'm grateful. That night, for the first time since their wedding night, Alistair asked if he could stay in her chambers. Not for duty or obligation, but just to be together. We don't have to, he started. I know, Seraphina said. Stay anyway. They lay in the dark talking until late, sharing thoughts and fears and hopes they'd never voiced before. When they finally fell asleep, it was in each other's arms, not passionate, not dramatic, just two people choosing closeness instead of distance. In the morning, Catherine brought breakfast and tried to hide her smile at finding the Duke still there. Don't, Seraphina warned. Don't make a thing of it. I would never, my lady. Catherine poured tea, her expression carefully neutral. Though the staff will be pleased to know things are progressing. After she left, Alistair laughed. Does the entire household know we spent the night together? Probably. They know everything. Seraphina buttered toast. Does it bother you? No. Let them know. Let everyone know. He took her hand. I'm choosing you, Seraphina, publicly and privately. I want people to know that. The official announcement came in June. The king had approved Alistair's appointment to the Ambassadors' Council, effective immediately. The accompanying statement praised his demonstrated commitment to personal growth and partnership, and noted that the Duchess of Crown's contributions to rural development made her an invaluable asset to the diplomatic community. They celebrated with a small dinner party. Eleanor, a few close friends, the Westbrooks. It was nothing like the massive ball where everything had fallen apart. It was intimate and real and filled with people who actually cared about them. Eleanor pulled Seraphina aside during dessert. You've done it. Actually done it. Turned disaster into triumph. We still have a long way to go. Of course you do. Marriage is work. It's always work. Eleanor's eyes were proud. But you've proven something important, that power doesn't have to come from perfection. It can come from honesty, from resilience, from choosing to fight for what matters even when it's hard. You taught me that. I gave you tools. You built the structure yourself. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Your mother would be proud. I know I am. Later, standing on the terrace with Alistair, looking at stars over Crown Manor, Seraphina felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly, but something close. Peace, maybe. Or hope. What are you thinking? Alistair asked. That 9 months ago I thought my life was over. That being sent here to marry you was the worst thing that could happen to me. And now? Now I think it might have been the making of me. Not because the marriage was easy, but because it wasn't. Because it forced me to become someone who could fight for herself. She looked at him. I'm not the same person who arrived here. Neither am I. He pulled her close. Better or worse? Different, maybe better, definitely stronger. She leaned into him. We'll probably still fight, still have bad days, still struggle with trust and history and all the damage we've done to each other. Probably, he agreed, but we're choosing this now, choosing each other. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Alistair said. Inside, through the windows, they could hear laughter and conversation, Eleanor holding court, friends celebrating a victory that had seemed impossible months ago, a household that had watched their Duchess transform from victim to victor. Seraphina thought about Vivian, wherever she was, thought about the woman she herself had been, desperate for approval, willing to be perfect, terrified of taking up space. Both versions seemed like strangers now. She'd won. Not because she'd destroyed her enemies or gotten everything she wanted, but because she'd learned to fight for herself, to claim power instead of waiting for it to be given, to transform a cage into a throne through sheer force of will and refusal to accept less than she deserved. The crown name had been meant to trap her. Instead, she'd made it hers. And standing on the terrace of Crown Manor, her husband's arm around her shoulders, the stars bright overhead, Seraphina Veil, no, Seraphina Crown, finally understood what Eleanor had been trying to teach her all along. Power wasn't about being perfect. It was about being unbreakable. And she was done breaking. She was done breaking. But the world wasn't done testing her. The invitation arrived in August, delivered by royal messenger in a sealed envelope bearing the king's crest. Seraphina opened it in the morning room, Alistair reading over her shoulder. "The king requests our presence at the autumn court session," she read aloud. "Both of us, specifically." "That's unusual," Alistair said. "Wives don't typically attend court sessions unless there's a specific reason." Eleanor, who'd been arranging flowers nearby, looked up sharply. "Let me see that." She read the invitation, her expression growing more serious. "This isn't just a social call. The king wants to evaluate you both. See if the redemption story is real or just good publicity." "Why would he care?" Seraphina asked. "Because Alistair's appointment set a precedent. Other nobles are arguing their past mistakes should be forgiven too. The king needs to know if he made the right choice or if he's opened the door to every scandal-ridden aristocrat claiming they've changed." Eleanor set down the letter. "You're being tested, both of you. And if you fail, it won't just cost Alistair his position, it'll damage the king's judgment." "What do we do?" Alistair asked. "You be exactly what you've been becoming," Eleanor said. "Honest, united, real. The king is shrewd. He'll see through performance. Your only chance is authenticity." The court session was 3 weeks away. They spent the time preparing, but not in the way Seraphina had prepared for things before. No rehearsed answers or calculated strategies. Instead, they talked, really talked, about their marriage, their mistakes, what they'd learned and were still learning. "What if they ask about Vivian?" Alistair said one night. "Then we tell the truth. That you had an affair. That it nearly destroyed our marriage. That ending it was hard but necessary." "Just like that? No softening it?" "Just like that?" Seraphina met his eyes. "We can't control how people judge us. We can only control whether we're honest about who we are." The night before they were to leave for the capital, Catherine helped Seraphina pack. The maid had been with her through everything, the humiliation, the transformation, the rebuilding. "My lady, can I ask you something?" Catherine said as she folded dresses. "Of course." "Are you scared? About tomorrow?" Seraphina considered the question. "Yes, but not the way I used to be scared. Before I was afraid of failing to be perfect. Now I'm just afraid of failing to be true to who I've become. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense, my lady," Catherine smiled. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be brilliant. I'm going to be myself. That'll have to be enough." The royal palace was magnificent and intimidating in equal measure. Seraphina and Alistair were shown to private chambers to prepare before the court session. As Catherine helped her dress, deep green silk that brought out her eyes, simple but elegant, Seraphina caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked different than she had a year ago. Older, yes, but also more solid somehow. Like she took up more space, occupied her own body with more confidence. The scared girl who'd arrived at Crown Manor was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own worth. The court chamber was enormous, all marble columns and gilded ceilings. The king sat on a raised dais at the far end, surrounded by advisors and nobles. Lord Chancellor Westbrook was there, along with several other members of the ambassadors' council. And scattered throughout were the aristocrats who'd whispered about Seraphina's humiliation, who'd watched her marriage nearly collapse, who'd judged and gossiped and waited for her to fail. She walked in beside Alistair, head high, and felt every eye on them. The king was younger than Seraphina expected, perhaps 40, with sharp eyes and a carefully neutral expression. He gestured for them to approach. They bowed. The formalities were observed. Then the king spoke. "Duke Crown, Duchess. I asked you here because your situation has become notable. A scandal that became a redemption story. Or so the papers say." His voice was measured, giving nothing away. "I want to hear it from you directly. Not the polished version for journalists. The truth. Why should I believe your marriage is anything more than political convenience? Alistair glanced at Seraphina. She gave him a tiny nod. They'd discussed this. Honesty, not performance. Your Majesty, Alistair began, our marriage started as political convenience. I won't pretend otherwise. We barely knew each other. I resented the arrangement and handled that resentment badly. I maintained an inappropriate relationship with another woman and hurt my wife deeply in the process. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The king raised a hand for silence. And you, Duchess? How did you respond to being hurt? Seraphina stepped forward slightly. I became exactly what I swore I'd never be, Your Majesty. Calculating, manipulative. I used blackmail and social pressure to force my husband to choose between his career and his affair. I threatened the other woman. I turned into someone I didn't recognize because I thought that was the only way to survive. More murmurs. This wasn't what people expected. Noble ladies were supposed to be demure, forgiving, perhaps wounded but graceful, not this raw honesty. That doesn't sound like redemption, the king observed. That sounds like two people who hurt each other. It was, Seraphina agreed. But then something changed. The scandal broke. Everything we'd built, the reputations, the careful facades, the lies we told ourselves, it all came crashing down. And in the rubble, we had a choice. Keep destroying each other or start building something real. Which you claim you did. Which we're trying to do, Alistair corrected. We're not perfect, Your Majesty. We still have hard days, still argue, still carry the weight of everything we did to each other, but we're choosing to move forward together instead of apart. The king leaned back in his throne. Pretty words, but I've heard pretty words before. What makes yours true? Seraphina felt something click into place. This was the moment, not to perform or impress, but to simply be honest about what they'd learned. Nothing makes them true except time and action, Your Majesty, she said. You can't know if we mean it. You can only watch what we do and decide for yourself. But I can tell you this, I'm not the same woman who married Duke Crown a year ago. That woman thought power meant being perfect and silent and convenient. She thought survival meant making herself smaller so others could be bigger. She was wrong. What changed your mind? Necessity, pain, anger. Seraphina paused. I learned that real power doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from refusing to be erased, from fighting for yourself even when the rules say you shouldn't, from turning a situation meant to trap you into something you can actually use. That sounds almost revolutionary, Duchess. It's practical, Your Majesty. Women in arranged marriages have 3 choices: accept misery, cause scandal, or find ways to build power within the constraints we're given. I chose the third option. I don't think that's revolutionary. I think it's survival. The king studied her for a long moment. Lord Westbrook tells me you've been instrumental in developing educational programs for estate workers, that you've created economic opportunities and improved productivity, that you've become an asset to the diplomatic community. Is this true? I've tried to make myself useful, Your Majesty, not just decorative. A hint of a smile crossed the king's face. I like that answer. He turned to Alistair. And you, Duke Crown? Are you a changed man or just a man who got better at hiding his flaws? I'm a man who's learning, Your Majesty. Learning that duty and desire don't have to be in conflict, that a partnership can be stronger than a romance if both people commit to building it, that the woman I married out of obligation is someone I'd choose freely now, knowing who she really is. You love her then? The chamber went quiet. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Alistair looked at Seraphina, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Acceptance of complexity. I'm learning to, Your Majesty. It's not the passionate, dramatic love you read about in novels. It's quieter than that, built on respect and shared struggle and choosing each other repeatedly even when it's hard. Is that love? I think maybe it is. A different kind, but real. Seraphina felt her throat tighten. They'd never said these things to each other so directly, let alone in front of the entire court. The king was quiet for several moments. Then he stood, and everyone in the chamber rose with him. I've seen enough, he said. Duke Crown, your appointment stands. Not because you're perfect, but because you demonstrated the capacity to change. To be honest about failure and committed to improvement. Those are qualities I value in my ambassadors. Relief flooded through Seraphina. But the king wasn't finished. Duchess Crown, I'm creating a new position, advisor on rural development. It will be a formal court appointment with real authority to implement programs across royal estates. I'm offering it to you. The chamber erupted in whispers. A formal court position for a woman? Unheard of. Seraphina's mind raced. This was power. Real, official power. Not influence gained through marriage, but authority in her own right. Your Majesty, I'm honored. But I have to ask, why? Because you've proven you can turn difficult situations into opportunities. Because the programs you've developed actually work. And because I believe in rewarding competence over convention. The king's expression was challenging. Unless you'd prefer to decline and remain just a duchess? Just a duchess. The same trap everyone kept trying to put her in. Seraphina lifted her chin. I accept, Your Majesty. Thank you. Good. You'll report to Lord Westbrook. Your first assignment is to present a comprehensive plan for expanding worker education programs across all royal estates. I want it in 3 months. You'll have it in 2, Your Majesty. The king actually smiled at that. I believe you will. Court is dismissed. As they left the chamber, Alistair grabbed Seraphina's hand. You just accepted a royal appointment. You're going to have real political power. I know. Are you terrified? Absolutely, but also excited. This is what Eleanor meant, isn't it? About making yourself indispensable, not through performance, but through actual competence. You've done more than make yourself indispensable, Alistair said. You've changed the rules. Women don't get royal appointments. But you did. That night, at a private dinner with Lord Westbrook and several other council members, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. These men, powerful, influential men who'd spent decades in politics, were treating Seraphina as an equal, asking her opinions, listening to her answers, debating strategy with her like she belonged at the table. Because she did belong. She'd earned it. I have to admit, Lord Westbrook said over dessert, when you first gave that interview, I thought it was just damage control. I didn't believe you'd actually changed, but watching you work these past months, seeing what you've built, I was wrong. You're the real thing, Duchess. Just Seraphina is fine when we're working, she said. Absolutely not. Westbrook smiled. You've earned that title. Use it. Later, in their chambers, Seraphina stood by the window looking out at the capital spread below them. Alistair came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking? He asked. That a year ago I would have been terrified to speak in front of the king, terrified to accept that appointment, terrified to take up space and claim authority. And now? Now I'm still terrified, but I'm doing it anyway. She turned to face him. Thank you. For what? For choosing me today. For saying those things in front of everyone. For meaning them. I did mean them, Alistair said quietly. I know I've said a lot of things I didn't mean over the years, but that was true. I'm learning to love you, Seraphina. The real you. Not some fantasy or convenience, but the actual woman you are. Even though I blackmailed you, threatened your career, turned your life upside down, especially because of that. Because you fought back. Because you refused to be broken. He cupped her face in his hands. I was in love with Vivian because she was easy. She fit into my life without disrupting anything. But you? You disrupted everything, and that's what I actually needed. Seraphina kissed him then, and it was different than their previous careful, dutiful kisses. This one had heat and honesty and the weight of everything they'd survived to get here. I'm learning to love you too, she whispered against his mouth. It's terrifying. Good. Let's be terrified together. They returned to Crown Manor 3 days later to find the household in celebration. News of Seraphina's appointment had spread. Catherine had organized the staff into preparing a welcome dinner. Even Eleanor was smiling. Royal Advisor on Rural Development, Eleanor said, raising her glass. I knew you had it in you. You helped make this possible, Seraphina said. Everything you taught me. I gave you tools. You built the empire. Eleanor's eyes were proud. Your mother would be beside herself. Her daughter, wielding actual political power. Unprecedented. Is it strange that I'm more nervous about this than I was about the marriage? Not strange at all. The marriage was imposed on you. This is something you chose. Stakes are higher when the responsibility is yours alone. The next months were a blur of work. Seraphina threw herself into developing the rural education plan with the same intensity she'd once put into being perfect. But this was different. This was building something real, something that would outlast her, something that mattered. She traveled to estates across the kingdom, meeting with workers and landowners, gathering data, refining programs. Alistair often came with her, and they developed a rhythm. He'd handle the political negotiations while she focused on practical implementation. They were becoming the partnership they'd claimed to be. One afternoon in October, they were visiting an estate in the Northern Territories when they encountered a young woman who reminded Seraphina painfully of herself a year ago. Her name was Margaret, recently married to the local lord in an arrangement made by her family. She looked lost and scared and very, very young. "May I ask you something, Your Grace?" Margaret said quietly while the men were discussing finances. "Of course. How do you make it work? An arranged marriage, I mean. Everyone says you and Duke Crown have found happiness, but—" She trailed off, uncertain. Seraphina thought carefully about her answer. "We didn't find happiness, Margaret. We built it, piece by piece, through a lot of pain and mistakes and hard conversations. And honestly, some days it's still work." That doesn't sound very encouraging. Here's what is encouraging. You're not powerless. Even in an arranged marriage, you have choices. You can choose to stay silent or speak up. You can choose to accept humiliation or fight back. You can choose to make yourself small or claim the space you deserve. Seraphina took the younger woman's hands. "The world will tell you that being a good wife means being perfect and quiet and convenient. That's a lie. Being a good wife, being a good person, means knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less than you deserve." "But what if my husband doesn't respect me? What if he has someone else?" "Then you decide what you're willing to accept and what you're not. And you enforce those boundaries, even if it's hard, even if people judge you for it." Seraphina squeezed her hands. "I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise you don't have to disappear just because someone married you." Margaret's eyes were bright with tears. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." After she left, Alistair came up beside Seraphina. "You gave her hope. I gave her permission to fight for herself. That's different." "Is it? I think hope and fighting are connected. You can't do one without the other." In November, Seraphina presented her comprehensive rural development plan to the king and his full council. She'd spent 2 months on it, refining every detail, running numbers until they were bulletproof. This was her chance to prove she deserved the appointment, that it wasn't just symbolic. She spoke for 90 minutes without notes, laying out a 5-year implementation strategy that would educate thousands of children, improve estate productivity, and create economic mobility for workers. She anticipated every objection, answered every question, demonstrated absolute mastery of the material. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Then the king started applauding. One by one, the council members joined in. "Approved," the king said. "All of it. Lord Westbrook, make this happen. Duchess, you'll have the funding and authority you need. This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking policy we need." Lord Pemberton, a conservative old noble who'd once called Seraphina that manipulative girl, stood up. "Your Majesty, if I may, I opposed this appointment initially. I thought it was political theater. I was wrong. The Duchess has demonstrated exceptional competence and vision. I move that we expand her authority to include all rural development initiatives, not just education." The motion passed unanimously. Seraphina left the chamber in a daze. Alistair caught up to her in the corridor. "Do you understand what just happened?" he asked. "I think so." "You didn't just get approval for your plan. You got expanded authority. You're now one of the most powerful people in rural policy in the entire kingdom." He was grinning. "And you did it on merit, pure competence. Nobody can claim you got it through marriage or manipulation or luck." "I feel like I might throw up." "That's reasonable. You just changed your life. Again." That night, alone in her chambers before dinner, Seraphina allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she'd accomplished. A year ago, she'd been a frightened girl in a marriage she didn't want, with no power, no voice, no future beyond the one others had chosen for her. Now she had a royal appointment, political authority, the respect of people who mattered, a marriage that was becoming real instead of just strategic, the ability to actually change things for thousands of people. She'd transformed a cage into a throne, but as she looked at herself in the mirror, Seraphina realized something important. The throne had never been the point. The point was becoming the kind of person who wouldn't accept being caged in the first place. The winter ball at Crown Manor that year was different than the one where everything had fallen apart. Seraphina planned it with Catherine, and this time it wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about celebrating what they'd built. 300 guests attended. The ballroom gleamed with candles and winter flowers. The orchestra played beautifully. And when Seraphina and Alistair opened the ball together, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, no other woman waiting in the wings, just two people who'd chosen each other after everything, dancing like they meant it. Halfway through the evening, Eleanor pulled Seraphina aside. "I have something for you." She handed over a small box. Inside was a ring, emerald surrounded by diamonds, clearly antique and valuable. "This was my mother's," Eleanor said, "and her mother's before that. It's passed down to the women in our family who've earned it, not through birth or marriage, but through proving they have the strength to carry the crown name with honor." Seraphina's eyes filled with tears. "Eleanor, you've earned it. You took a disaster and turned it into triumph. You transformed yourself and your marriage and everyone's expectations of what a duchess could be. You're exactly what this family needs." Eleanor's voice was gruff with emotion. "I'm proud to call you my daughter." Seraphina slipped the ring on. It fit perfectly. Later, as midnight approached and guests began departing, Seraphina found herself on the same terrace where she'd confronted Vivian a year ago. But this time Alistair was with her, and the memory held no power. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Vivian hadn't leaked the story?" he asked. "If we just kept going the way we were?" "Sometimes. But I think we would have imploded eventually. The leak just forced us to confront things we were avoiding." "So in a weird way, she did us a favor." "In a weird way, yes." Seraphina leaned against him. "I heard she got engaged, to Lord Blackwood." "How do you feel about that?" "I hope she's happy. Really, I don't hate her anymore. I don't even think about her much. She was a symptom of our problems, not the cause. We were the cause. We were. But we're also the solution." She turned to face him. "I love you, Alistair. Not the way I thought I would if I ever said those words. It's messier than that, built on scar tissue and shared trauma and choosing each other every day even when it's hard. But it's real. I love you too. The you that fought back, the you that refused to disappear, the you that's changing the kingdom one estate at a time." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for becoming someone worth not giving up on." They stood together under the winter stars, and Seraphina thought about journeys and transformations and the woman she'd become. She wasn't perfect. She still got angry, still made mistakes, still had moments of doubt and fear. But she was powerful. Not because someone gave her power, but because she'd claimed it herself. The cage had become a throne. And she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Real power didn't come from perfection or performance or playing by other people's rules. Real power came from knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less. From fighting for yourself even when the world said you shouldn't. From turning the circumstances meant to trap you into the foundation of something greater. Seraphina Crown had arrived at Crown Manor as a pawn in someone else's game. She'd leave it, whenever that distant day came, as a queen who'd written her own rules. And that, she thought, watching the last guest depart and the lights of her estate glow warm against the winter night, was worth every battle, every scar, every hard-won step of the journey. She'd started this story invisible and powerless. She was ending it, seen and strong, and she was just getting started. Inside the manor, Catherine was directing staff in cleanup, already planning for the next event. Eleanor was holding court with remaining guests, telling stories about the old days when she'd been the young Duchess fighting her own battles. The household hummed with life and purpose and possibility. This was her empire now. Not because she'd inherited it, but because she'd earned it. The girl who'd been sent here to be decorative and convenient was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. A woman who'd learned that the only cage that could hold you was the one you accepted. A woman who'd chosen to fight instead of fade. A woman who'd transformed a royal cage into a throne. And from that throne, she would change the world. One choice at a time, one battle at a time, one victory at a time. The story that started with humiliation and betrayal ended with power and purpose and a marriage built on truth instead of lies. Not perfect, never perfect, but real. And real, Seraphina had learned, was infinitely more valuable than perfect had ever been. She took one last look at the stars, then turned and went inside. Not to the cold blue chambers she'd once occupied alone, but to rooms she now shared with a husband who'd learned to choose her, in a house she'd made her own, in a life she'd fought for and won. The cage was gone. The throne remained, and the woman who sat upon it was unbreakable.